בחרמון נמס השלג בחצי הלילה, בחרמון זורם לו פלג בחצי הליל. אבא שם על הר השלג בחצי הלילה, שר שירים על נס בפלא עם כל ישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. בבקעת תמר פורח בחצי הלילה, הירח שם זורח בחצי הליל. שם אחי ודאי שומע בחצי הלילה את שירנו השמח כאן בישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. במדבר הולך החושך בחצי הלילה, שקט הס בארץ גושן בחצי הליל. לדודי עיני נחושת בחצי הלילה, וגם הוא חוגג כמו שכל בית ישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. ואני יושב בבית בחצי הלילה, עם נרות וגביע יין בחצי הליל, וכוכב מאיר עיניים בחצי הלילה, לי מוסר ברכת שמיים ולכל ישראל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. האביב שוב צוהל ואיתי משתולל, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה לילה, איזה ליל. שוב צוהל.
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Ті, хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар.
Future sons
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 982 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again as the U.S. deploys B-52 bombers to the Middle East, and also Iranian proxies launch massive probing attacks on Israel, indicating that something big is about to happen in the Middle East. And also, we have very big Ukraine news as well. It's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we have news today that is some of the most concerning and most escalatory that we've heard out of the regions of the Middle East, as well as the areas around Ukraine today, as we've been able to hear that according to all of the news that we have, today's tensions are truly as high as they've ever gotten. We've been saying that for about each day every week now, and every single day, the last day is upped one by a large margin, and today is absolutely no exception, as we have been able to hear some very concerning news coming out of multiple different areas around the world. Starting off with our most breaking news, we were able to hear that the Islamic Republic of Iran has officially given a threat to the entirety of the world, specifically the Middle Eastern region, that nuclear war could commence at any time. And while, according to the Iranian spokesman, they do not have an operational nuclear weapon at this moment due to the request of the Supreme Leader, they are completely capable of rapidly producing one and using it against the Israelis or U.S.-backed interests within this region. One of the most concerning statements that we've seen, as this is directly stating that the Iranians have the ability to produce and use a weapon of mass destruction. At the exact same time, the United States Armed Forces is responding in its own way, transporting a large amount of B-52 Stratofortress bombers into the region, along with several other Department of Defense personnel and equipments that could be used to counter the Islamic Republic's threats and also their incredibly dangerous and escalatory actions that we have seen so far today. Nevertheless, moving on over into East Asia, we of course have a very small update on the ongoing news from the Korean Peninsula, as while both sides are still at an absolute fever pitch as diplomatic tensions or diplomatic relations have pretty much completely deteriorated at this point, we have been able to see that the foreign minister of North Korea, who surprisingly actually does exist, was able to make a statement today saying that the North Koreans are 100% behind the Russian Federation's and their quote-unquote holy war, showing that the North Koreans are starting to put a spiritual emphasis on the conflict, meaning that they are going to start heavily propagandizing this conflict and probably stirring up a large amount of fervor, or at least violent fervor, within the Democratic People's Republic of Korea in support of the war effort in the Russian Federation against the collective West. Meanwhile, outside of East Asia and the Middle East, we've been able to see that the war in Ukraine has been going on quite heavily today, and we've also been able to see that specifically within the Stavropol region of the Russian Don area, we were able to hear that in the town of Svetlograd, another large Russian oil refinery within the area, vital to the Russian war effort and the production of more usable fuels to keep the Russian army running inside of Ukraine, has apparently been stricken quite significantly, with fires being filmed from the outside perimeter, and once again showing us that the Ukrainian armed forces are beginning to attack and destroy Russian oil depots and facilities, once again trying to debilitate one of the major Achilles heels of the Russian Federation. Meanwhile, salvage efforts have begun on the Rapucha-class landing ship that was sunk within the port of Feodosia several months ago. This ship has been sitting pretty much burned to the waterline inside the port of Feodosia, and just recently it appears that the Russians have completely signed off the vessel, claiming that it is beyond the point of salvage or really repair, and have actually begun to cut up the ship in port and salvage its remains, most likely to use the metals in other areas of the war effort where they could be used a lot more. Once again, showing that the Russian Navy's logistical abilities are largely at their death nail, and also giving us an idea that the Russian Federation is starting to become a little bit resource sparse, at least from what we can tell at the moment. Meanwhile, inside of Ukraine itself, heavy action has been occurring in the Kursk Oblast against the Russian Federation's armed forces, as the Ukrainians have been conducting a very successful defensive operation just over the past 24 hours alone. We have also been able to see the Ukrainian forces around the area of Vovchansk continuing to strike Russian Federation forces on the northern side of the town, suggesting that the Ukrainians have clear and dominating control of the southern and central quarters of the city. And meanwhile, we have also been able to see heavier defensive actions happening around the area of Bakhmut, as well as the area of Volodar in Zaporizhia near Robotny, and we have been able to hear a claim that a Russian Federation aircraft has been shot down, an Su-34, somewhere over the area of western Russia, although I do have to say, just really quickly, that the unfounded, and I have to say that they are completely unfounded rumors that the Su-34 was shot down by an F-16 are not corroborated by any information from the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, any Ukrainian sources on the ground, or the Russian Federation itself, largely leaving it a mystery.
Man, Enforcer, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story, man. Like, come on, man.
Man, you gotta get out a good story, man, even if it doesn't have any validity. But I do want to make that quite clear at this point, before we even get into the rest of the news, that story, from what we can tell, and I mean this quite lightly, actually, this is about the lightest statement I can make about it, is absolute bogus and based on no facts whatsoever. But we will be getting into that analysis a little bit later when we get to the Ukraine war segment tonight. But nevertheless, we have loads of breaking news to be delivering to all of y'all here at this moment. And moving us on down into the Middle East, we have been able to hear probably one of the most dangerous statements that has ever been made in the Middle East so far. Many people will remember that the story about weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East, specifically for the American story in the Middle East, has always been one that has been mired in controversy. The United States of America did conduct an invasion of Iraq in 2003 under the assumption that the Iraqi government was beginning to produce weapons of mass destruction, according to faulty intelligence that had been delivered by the CIA, claiming that the Iraqis had yellow cake uranium, which is largely an enriched uranium product, and were beginning to produce some sort of nuclear warheads that could be delivered anywhere within the region by Scud missiles. The United States then invaded the country and later on found out that there was no yellow cake uranium that the Iraqis had possession of, but nevertheless, that is something that has been lasting in American memory largely for the entirety of the beginning of this century. Nevertheless, the fact that weapons of mass destruction can be produced in the Middle East is a very serious one, and we have been able to see that the Iranians, on the other hand, have actually been moving in concrete actions and steps towards producing some sort of a weapon of mass destruction. From what we understand, this has been going on for just about 10 years at this point, with the first murmurings of this really coming about in 2012, but the actual knowledge that the Iranians would be able to produce a weapon of mass destruction being planted in American minds at least around 2014, and really throughout the entirety of the Western world. Since then, the United States and Western allies have been attempting very softly to try and either curb the Iranian nuclear development program into one of more peaceful means instead of one of more warlike measures. But no actual assertive or aggressive action has been taken by Western nations against the Islamic Republic of Iran to completely debilitate their nuclear program whatsoever, whether for peaceful or more so warlike purposes. Nevertheless, we have been hearing recently from the United States intelligence that the Iranians are getting incredibly close to producing an actual nuclear weapon. That a weapon of mass destruction that the United States has been fearing for decades would eventually start to arise in the Middle East. There are many treaties, I do have to remind everyone of, that completely prohibit the use or possession of nuclear weapons by countries that are not stated directly within the nuclear non-proliferation treaties. These treaties are made by the nuclear powers of the world, consisting of the United States of America, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, the Republic of France, the Russian Federation, the People's Republic of China, the Republic of India, as well as the I believe it's actually the Republic of Pakistan or the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, have all made agreements largely prohibiting other countries rather than the ones that I just listed from possessing or using nuclear weapons. The only countries that remain outside the parameters of this treaty currently are the Democratic People's Republic of Korea and the State of Israel, from what we understand, although the State of Israel has never had any sort of sanctions or any kind of action taken against them for the possession of their nuclear weapons. Also, I forgot to mention, this is a small caveat some people may bring up. South Africa did have nuclear weapons when the first non-proliferation treaties were made, but South Africa since then has completely denuclearized, meaning that they have no nuclear warheads currently in their possession or at their disposal at this current day and age. But nevertheless, the Iranians are not mentioned in these treaties, and once again, this has always been a major concern of multiple countries around the world, that a Middle Eastern nation that may be highly unstable, such as the Saddam Hussein's regime inside of Iraq, or maybe even Khomeini's regime inside of Iran, could possibly possess a nuclear weapon and begin to wave it over the area largely as an iron fist. It seems as though that reality is now upon us, and the time truly is ripe now for a country to declare that they can conduct nuclear war, and certainly have the means and the abilities, from what we understand and also from what they're saying, to be able to produce a usable nuclear weapon and use it in a very short amount of time. The statement that we were able to get today was from Kamal Karazi, who apparently is an advisor to Iran's supreme leader, Khomeini. And he told Al-Mayadeen, which sounds like Aladdin from like the Dictator movie, but nevertheless, he said that changing the country's nuclear doctrine is on the table if Tehran is exposed to an existential threat, meaning some sort of a threat of any kind or any shape that could start to coalesce outside of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And according to another direct quote, he said, "We now have the technical capabilities necessary to produce nuclear weapons, ... Only the Supreme Leader's fatwa currently prohibits it." And that was according to Karazi, who is a senior advisor to Khomeini. This is not even a veiled nuclear threat. This is an overt nuclear threat, stating that they do have the abilities to rapidly produce a nuclear weapon, and not only produce it, but actually use it against a country that they view as conducting an existential threat to the Islamic Republic of Iran. This is an incredibly dangerous situation that we're currently seeing in the region at the moment. It was already quite a precarious one, considering that there has been an ongoing tit-for-tat in airstrikes being conducted by the Iranians on the Israelis and from the Israelis back towards the Islamic Republic of Iran. But nevertheless, this really starts to cause a very serious issue at the moment, considering that the Iranians are now making it quite clear they actually have the ability to produce a weapon of mass destruction and use it against anyone that they deem necessary. And that was the threat that was issued today. This is a very serious thing, and it is showing, I would have to say at this point, a major failing by the Western world to be able to deal with this situation and quash it before we were able to get to the point where the Iranians were comfortable enough making a statement like this. This is a very dangerous thing, and I will try and lay out a little bit of the explanation as to why. Iran has a highly unstable government. Much like the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, from what we understand, there's not a large amount of public support inside of Iran that actually allows for the government to pretty much have a bit of a benevolent rule, or one where they're not having to constantly oppress the public to be able to keep themselves in power. This means that this government is usually highly irrational in its decision making, and sometimes has to make decisions that are at the detriment of pretty much everyone, but it has to ensure that the government will survive. This government inside of Iran has made multiple decisions such as this in the past, of course on a non-nuclear level. But with Iran now possessing, or here in the near future going to possess, a nuclear weapon, they are already making it very clear that if anything starts to threaten the stability of that government, which is already incredibly weak as it is, they could immediately start to fire off a nuclear weapon and a preemptive strike towards another country in the region, or possibly around the world, once again directly targeting the United States of America, a lot like North Korea's ICBMs at the moment. This is something that I cannot stress enough is a situation that must be dealt with immediately. Not a lot of people are a big fan of conducting any form or sort of offensive action towards another country. Even in a situation like this, there always seems to be a good bit of pushback that maybe if we just sit back and do nothing and maybe just, give some thoughts and prayers, maybe the nuclear weapons and the nuclear research programs will start to disappear and just fade into oblivion. But that's not the kind of world that we live in. The Islamic Republic of Iran is already making it very clear that they will have a usable nuclear weapon here in the very near future. And there are only a few countries in this world right now that can actually curb this or completely stop it from happening. Really, the only two is the state of Israel or the United States of America directly with support from the United Kingdom. That is really the only two options that we have at the moment. We could give authorization in the U.S. government to the Israelis, now considering that this threat is a very imminent one, according to the Iranian statement, for the Israelis to attack and strike the nuclear research facilities within Isfahan and also spreading all the way up towards Tehran, and also some of them are around the area of Tabriz, but most of them are around Isfahan and just a little north of that, heading towards Tehran. We could give the Israelis an ability to strike and destroy these nuclear research facilities to at least set back the nuclear research programs within Iran by several years. Or there is a much more aggressive alternative that the United States of America, as well as the United Kingdom, could get involved in some sort of a military intervention against the Islamic Republic of Iran with the claim or the specific war goal that they were going to denuclearize the country and also cut down their armed forces to scale. That could be a war objective of the United States and the United Kingdom if they were to conduct direct armed action against the Islamic Republic of Iran, and that action could completely or wholly dismantle the nuclear weapons program and also largely untooth the Iranian government and its abilities to continue to conduct proxy warfare and conflicts throughout the entirety of the Middle East, spanning from the western coast of Yemen and all the way up into the hills of northern Lebanon. We do not know which path will be taken at the moment. We have not really heard any statements from the United States government or even the Israeli government today about this very clear and dangerous threat that is now being stated by the Iranian government in broad daylight. It seems as though, however, a lot of people are talking about the possibility of Iran getting nuclear weapons being one of the most serious threats that the modern world is currently facing within this year. And a lot of people seem to believe that something should be done about this, if anything, to make sure that they are untoothed, as I said it, or in a better way, according to Monster Lab, defanged. But nevertheless, Matthew, what are people thinking about this Iranian nuclear threat at this moment? Are they thinking that this is the most serious thing that is happening in the world currently, considering that it could give a very unstable government access to nuclear weapons? Or are they thinking that there are more important fish to fry somewhere else in the world, like East Asia or Eastern Europe? And what are you thinking as well?
So it looks like a whopping 53% of the audience said yes, it is the #1 top issue in the world right now if Iran was to get nuclear weapons, while 31% said it's important but not really a top issue, and 10% said it's really not that serious. And for me personally, in my personal opinion, I would say this is probably the #1 top issue. And I know some people are going to say, well, wait a minute, what about Ukraine? Because that threatens European security. That is true, and that is a very serious issue that we've been covering for quite some time. But the issue of Iran getting nukes is much more serious than that, in my opinion, because Iran is a bit of a rogue state, to say the least. And if they get a weapon of mass destruction and start wielding that in the Middle East, with them being so rogue, that is even more dangerous than what's happening in Ukraine right now. So I would say that that should be addressed with the utmost priority, with stopping Iran from actually developing these nukes and finalizing them if they already don't have them right now. We're really not sure about that. We don't have the intel in the public to know whether or not they have the nukes or they're really close to finishing them. We just simply don't know. But I would say that needs to be curbed at all costs. Israel's already offered to curb that, but the U.S. has basically stepped in and said, no, do not hit their nuclear facilities. That will cause too much escalation. In my opinion, I'm with Netanyahu. I think they should go in there and take those out immediately to put a stop to that, because Iran, if they get nukes, it's going to be hell in the Middle East, even more so than it is now. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, this is the number one issue in the world currently. And that actually is a pretty tall order to say that this is the most serious one, but it's the most serious one because it's the one that's actually in a state of transition at the moment. The situation with North Korea, it's already a nuclear country. It will always be a nuclear country from this point forward. And so that situation, while tense, isn't really the most concerning thing in the world at the moment, because the amount of fluctuation from normal to very dangerous isn't really that much. However, in Eastern Europe, the situation has escalated a great deal. But once again, because the war in Ukraine has been going on for nearly 3 years at this point, this situation is largely leveled out to where escalations can happen and things can get worse or better. But still, at the same time, it's not going to rapidly become worse or better and be completely changing the way the world works in just a matter of a few short months. In the Middle East, however, this situation could be incredibly bad. We don't really know how bad off the Iranian government really is at this point, and the fact that they are producing a nuclear weapon is concerning enough in itself from what we would know. And not only that, they are fairly unstable. And we do have to remind you all that unlike other countries, Iran was just bombed about last week by the Israelis. And most of their rocket fuel facilities within the capital, really the only ones in the entire country, as well as vital defense sites in Iran, were targeted and destroyed just a short while ago. This is a country that is threatening that they could start to use nuclear weapons if they feel threatened. And those kinds of actions that the Israelis took just last week probably are actions that the Iranians, if they had a nuclear weapon, would say is threatening enough to start nuking the Israelis and possibly other countries in the area, or completely throw off U.S. stability or U.S., I guess you could say, the U.S. sphere of influence in this region, because everyone will be far more scared of the Iranians than they would be scared of getting away from the United States and not getting nuked by the Iranians. This is a very serious thing. It's wildly serious. I cannot stress that enough, and something needs to be done immediately about a threat like this. And I'm trying to get that out as much as I can. I can't even make up titles like these anymore, because it seems absolutely crazy that we're actually having to have a title here on this night's news saying that Iran threatens nuclear war. It sounds like clickbait. It sounds like something that someone would come up with just to try and get views. But crazily enough, the news coming out of the world these days is so insane that I don't even think some of the greatest clickbaiters could actually come up with a title like this and it actually has truth and validity behind it like we have today. That's the most concerning thing about this. That's actually the reality. People think, like I would think if I saw that title that we have on tonight's news, that is an outlandish kind of a claim, and that just is not reality. And it is. It is clearly reality at this point. We're living in this kind of reality, and we need to see that it changes immediately. If it does not change immediately, it will never change, and if it does, it's going to only get worse from here. And I would rather see that we deal with an uncomfortable reality, at least in a very short amount of time, than a very uncomfortable reality over a very long-term picture on in the future. And so,
Well, I see, Enforcer, that a lot of people in the chat are bringing up the issue of what would the response from Iran look like. For example, if the U.S. gave Israel permission to go into Iran and take out all the nuclear research facilities and all the nuclear sites that we suspect that they have underground in various other places, what would the response from Iran look like toward the Western interest and also toward Israel? And also, would other countries possibly jump in as well, considering the fact that we would take out the most crucial thing that Iran has going for it right now, which is the nuclear weapons?
We have a feeling that no one would really get involved if we did start to if we did start to bomb Iranian nuclear weapons facilities. We don't really think anyone would actually have that big of an issue with it, because historically in the past, no one's really had an issue with us bombing Iran when we have in limited measures a little while ago. Like, for example, in 1988, just to pull up this operation, because it's probably the most famous one that the United States has conducted against the Islamic Republic here in the recent history of the region, but it's Operation Praying Mantis. And Operation Praying Mantis occurred on the 18th of April in 1988 and was a United States operation to destroy the Iranian Navy. It was really only to destroy half of it. We weren't looking on we weren't looking for the complete destruction of the entire Iranian Navy, but we were wanting to send a message. And when we conducted this bombing, while the Soviet Union was starting to get into a very late stage of decay, and was starting to fall apart, there was still a pretty considerable threat, or at least concern at the time, that the Soviet Union may actually respond in support of Iran, considering that while Iran was not necessarily a member of the Warsaw Pact or a part of the Soviet Union, it still was an anti-American country. In the Soviets' mind, an anti-American country is better than the alternative. But nevertheless, we ended up bombing half of the Iranian Navy, pretty much destroying half of it outright in about half an hour, and the Soviets never really made that big of a diplomatic protest or a response to this, and largely just ignored it. And that was a very big instance at the time where we ended up just obliterating the Iranians on a whim for the large part, because one of their mines ended up getting loose from its chains, ended up kind of floating into a maritime channel that was being used by ships, well, merchant vessels that were traveling through the Persian Gulf. And the USS Samuel B. Roberts that was escorting one of those vessels ended up striking a mine and getting damaged by it. I don't think the Samuel B. Roberts struck the mine and sank. Let's see, it nearly sank, but there was no loss of life. No one even died on this vessel, and the vessel didn't sink either. But nevertheless, we went on to bombing half of their navy. And so you can kind of get the idea. We can conduct actions against the Iranians, completely destroying some of their critical military abilities, like their navy for the large part, without anyone really creating a big issue about it. And back then, there was a very big issue to be made. It was actually a big concern at the time, and this is why we didn't really go in and overthrow the Islamic Republic's government immediately once it was founded in 1979. We were scared that the Soviets were actually going to start backing them up and supporting them in that kind of a hypothetical scenario. And you can actually see that really well represented in a movie from the time that was made in the United Kingdom called Threads, which is a movie about the hypothetical scenario that the world actually had a nuclear war, and it's the aftermath of that nuclear war and what it would look like. The United Kingdom actually had a hypothetical scenario that they allowed Threads to be based on, where a situation started to devolve in Iran. The United States militarily got involved. The Soviets also got involved in support of the Islamic Republic's government, and we ended up using tactical nuclear weapons on each other inside of Iran. Then a major ground conflict broke out in Europe as an extenuation of that, and then it turned into a large intercontinental exchange. That was something that was actually a consideration of the time, and even with that being so, and that movie being made, I think, in 1985 or 1986, just a few years later, we ended up bombing the Iranian Navy, and no one came to help them when that happened. Another thing is that back in the day when the Soviets were really a big fan of the Iraqis, while the Soviet Union had collapsed by this point, the Israelis did go in and conduct an airstrike to destroy their nuclear research reactor that was supposedly being used to create weapons of mass destruction, I think sometime around 1993 or 1994. And the Russian Federation, nor anyone else in the world, really stepped up to try and protect the Iraqis from this largely offensive Israeli strike. It was literally an unprompted one. The Israelis just considered it a massive risk and ended up bombing the facility, and no one did anything about it. And then finally, one last thing to bring up about Iran is that they are in violation of a treaty that every single nuclear power has signed. If we were to do something against a country like Iran that doesn't actually have a technical standing defensive pact with the Russian Federation or China, and while Russia says they have ally status, that's only in words. That's not an actual binding treaty, so they could easily back off of that statement. No one has a treaty with them, and not only that, if they are producing a nuclear weapon, they are going to be in violation of the non-nuclear proliferation treaty that everyone in the world has signed that's a major nuclear power, and so it would be really hard for the Russians, the Chinese, even Pakistan that borders them, to somehow come to their defense and say, well, you can't do that because they're making nuclear weapons. They have a right to, because everyone has signed an actual binding treaty saying that these countries are the only ones that can have nuclear weapons. A country like Iran simply cannot have them under any exceptions.
Very interesting. Me personally, I would say this, that if Iran currently does not have a functional nuclear weapon, and once again, we've said this multiple times, Just because you have a nuclear weapon does not mean you have a operating and functional delivery system. And right now, we don't know if they have either one. I've seen people in the chat say, "Oh no, we've known they had one for a long time," but there's no like concrete evidence out there suggesting that we know for a fact right now, at least in the public's eye, that Iran has a functional one right now. And they definitely don't have a delivery system, so we know that. But the only fear I have is Iran could use like some sort of like dirty nuke and take that over toward Israel, maybe try to smuggle it in, or maybe bring it to the border and then try to explode it, or maybe use that as a hostage type situation to tell Israel, if you attack us again, then we're going to blow up the dirty nuke right on your border. That could be the possibility here of what they could do as well if they don't have a delivery system.
That may be the case. Also, someone said, not every single nuclear power, absolutely incorrect. If you're talking about Israel and North Korea, we already mentioned that caveat in the past. But moving on from that, though, I would say that maybe is a consideration to be had, that maybe someone would come and back them up or something along those lines. But I don't really think so. I think they largely would truly be on their own. Also, by the way, Matthew, I have to ask you, is the heater on right now?
No, the AC is actually on right now.
Dude, it is getting hot back here, man. I have my fan on. If I bump it up anymore, I think it's going to be heard on the microphone. But it's starting to get fairly warm back here, man. It's like a sauna. I was like,
Man, it's colder in here right now than the Iranian launch room on missile night.
man, I'm telling you, man. But like, if you could bump that down a little bit, because it's it's either like freezing cold in here or burning hot. I would rather have a freezing cold though, because at least I have kind of like a space heater to adjust that with a little bit. But it's getting insane back here. It's like
Let me bump
blazing.
it down. That nuke talk's getting you heated. It's nuclear warming.
Man, I'm telling you, it really kind of is. But moving on from that, we have been able to see the United States is starting to move some more forces into the area. We're not exactly sure that this is a quiet response to the nuclear threat that was made today, or whether this is a continuation of America just building up its forces in defensive actions in support of Israel. But nevertheless, we were able to hear that more American reinforcements are moving into the area. We've been able to hear that B-52 Stratofortresses have been moved into the area, along with tanker aircraft, most likely of the KC-135 or KC-46 Pegasus variants, and also some destroyers from the U.S. Navy have also been sent to the Middle East as surge forces as well. From what we are seeing at the moment, the Navy and the Air Force are continuing to move a decent amount of resources and equipment into the area. This is giving us a fairly good idea that this is most likely a defensive posturing, but there is a little bit of a thing to be said about the slow amounts of movements that have been made over the past few months that are giving us a little bit more of an idea. There's a bit of an offensive edge to these movements as well. We have seen that the United States has been defending Israel and that there has been the movement of THAADs, F-22s, which would largely be in a defensive role only in support of Israel. But the arrival of the 431st Fighter Squadron into Saudi Arabia, now along with the arrival of B-52 Stratofortresses, is a very interesting kind of a change to the usual thing that we see. A B-52 Stratofortress is a strategic bomber, and while these are largely obsolete in their original intended role, the B-52 Stratofortress isn't really down and out of the count yet. These things are used in the modern day, or at least in a modern air environment, to be able to fire off air-to-ground missiles of an incredibly long range, usually some sort of a ballistic missile or a cruise missile of a sort mounted under the wings on pylons that these aircraft are able to launch in very large numbers. That's generally what a B-52 is used for, but that is not a defensive role. That is once again an offensive role that these B-52s would fill. Kind of like how we see the Russians firing off missiles into Ukraine off of their strategic bombers. It's kind of literally it's an exact same principle. But nevertheless, the arrival of a B-52, along with the arrival of the 431st Fighter Squadron out of Europe, is kind of giving us an idea that while the U.S. keeps building up defensive forces in the area, there is a slow buildup of offensive forces that could conduct a counterattack against the Islamic Republic of Iran, possibly as some sort of a fail-safe measure. If things were to go completely out of control in the region, we could begin immediate offensive strikes against Iran, but we don't really know for sure. But it is interesting to see that we are combining anti-radar, or really the destruction of air defense sites, along with the B-52s that would be firing off missiles into Iran that Iran might be able to intercept if they did have competent working air defense sites to be able to shoot those missiles down with. So it looks as though we're starting to build up an offensive package that can be used in the area. And of course, U.S. Navy destroyers, they can quite literally do anything. The ones that are most likely being moved into the area are Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, like the one pictured here. These have both defensive and offensive abilities. Interestingly enough, though, the Arleigh Burke is kind of kind of derided as being obsolete or heavily dated. But the craziest thing about it is that the first Arleigh Burke went into service, I believe, in 1988. So it's not incredible. Well, actually, the first one went into service in 1991. So they're not incredibly old. They're only about 30 years old, which for some ship designs is getting on up there. But really, most of the time, it's not that old. Most like designs of vessels like these usually last a pretty long time. Like the Oliver Hazard Perry, which I can show y'all right here. This one actually had a pretty long service with the United States Armed Forces from 1977 all the way up until the present day, but I don't believe in the U.S. Navy. I think in the U.S. Navy, let's see here. Yeah, in 2020, the Navy replaced the Oliver Hazard Perry completely with the Constellation-class frigates, which are going to be the new ones that aren't even in service yet. But nevertheless, these were in service for quite a long time. And the Arleigh Burke, according to at least the lifespan of your average U.S. Navy vessel, has a little bit of more time behind it. And these things really do pack a punch. Just to give you all an idea of the weaponry that these things have, it's quite a lot. So let me see if I can get y'all down here to the armament. So first off, they have the main gun, the 5-inch gun that you'll see on the forward area of the bow. They also have a decent amount of additional weaponry as well, generally defensive weaponry. The DDG-51s to 84s actually had 2 phalanx systems, which are your close-in weapon systems that are able to destroy anti-ship missiles or any other kind of, I guess you could say, projectiles that are being fired towards the Arleigh Burke. They're fairly competent, but they're really the last line of defense for the vessel. They also have chaff dispensers that are also present on pretty much all modern warships. So this thing is kitted out pretty well in a defensive manner. They also have a load of vertical launch cells, or VLS cells, that can be used to defend the vessel against far out air threats that are being launched towards it. It also has a very high number as well of offensive measures on top of that. It is able to fire surface-to-air missiles such as the REM-66. It is also able to fire, let's see here, the REM-156, which is another form of a surface-to-air missile. It is also able to fire an ERAM, which is kind of a version of an it's an extended range active missile. It's kind of an anti-ship missile of a sort, but it can also be used in other measures as well. They also have an anti-ballistic missile, once again, another air defense system that can be loaded into the VLS, or the vertical launch system. They also have Tomahawk cruise missiles. No one even needs an introduction to those. Everyone knows what a Tomahawk is, and everyone knows that they're pretty competent at what they do. And they also are able to launch RUM-139s, which are an anti-submarine kind of a rocket that can be used to engage and destroy enemy submarines. Although Iran doesn't really have a large number of submarines at all, and we believe that the only submarines that the Iranians have at the moment are midget submarines, which would pose very little of a threat unless the United States Navy was very close to the Iranian shoreline. Nevertheless, they have quite the number of weapons to be used on the Arleigh Burke. And you can actually see a picture here of a large amount of them firing off their missiles from their VLS cells in a training exercise back in the, I think, early 90s, if the picture is dated correctly. But still,
Oh, no, they call that the USS, Jake Sullivan, so that's very interesting.
the Sullivans, actually named after the Sullivan brothers that all died in World War II. But
The
beyond
other
that,
Sullivan, a good one.
yeah, the unfortunate Sullivans, the bit of a tragedy, really. But beyond that, this is something that is giving us an idea. The United States may actually be building up an offensive ability, and it seems as though a lot of people are really starting to talk about what the United States might do. Would they actually conduct some sort of preemptive action against Iran and possibly start bombing them if the situation got out of control, or if they'd start any kind of preemptive action just over the nuclear threat we heard today? And it seems as though everyone is literally split down the middle on 3 different ideas about this. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so this poll is all over the place, but today we did hear that the B-52 bombers have been deployed by the United States to the Middle East in a pretty big move. And might the U.S. preemptively bomb Iran? A pretty big question, and it seems to be very contentious. About 31% said yes, the U.S. will likely do it, while another 31% also said no, the U.S. will not do that right now, and 29% said possible, but unlikely. And this is probably the most evenly split poll I've seen in months. Like, it's really crazy to see this, but in in my view, it's really hard to tell because right now, the U.S. has a very, very strong appeasement model of foreign policy. And typically, they would not do preemptive strikes under that doctrine. But at this point, I'm thinking that maybe the U.S. realizes that Iran is getting so out of hand that it may be necessary to go in there and knock them down a little bit before they're able to attack Israel any further. Because we're going to have to put a lot of defensive measures into helping out Israel during the next attack that comes from Iran. And that's going to use a lot of resources and a lot of time from our armed forces and also tie them up in the region. And I think we're starting to realize we need to do something to get this under control. At least that's wishful thinking on my part, but I'm not really sure if that's actually happening. So I'm kind of with the 29%. It's possible, but kind of unlikely. So I'm sort of down the middle, kind of copping out. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would also have to agree with the 29% that it's possible but unlikely, because we are seeing that they are building up the ability to preemptively strike the Iranians or respond with a strike on the Iranians if they needed to, which is giving us the idea that somewhere, at least within the government, there is an idea or at least a consideration being given to a preemptive strike against Iran. So the fact that they're moving equipment over there that would be able to do something like that is giving us a fairly good idea that is somewhere on the table, somewhere deep inside the government. But nevertheless, it does seem to be unlikely. We have seen that U.S. posturing in the region has been on the back foot, and we've also seen that the United States has been conducting a large deal of appeasement, really globally, to try and see if they can just not have anything blow up here soon where we have to get involved. But that also is going to be creating far more dangerous scenarios down the line. So going off of that, I would say that it looks as though they're giving it a very serious consideration in the background, just off of the movement of offensive weaponry and offensive, I guess you could say, units like the 431st as well as these B-52s, but we will never really see until time starts to unfold. Still, though, most of the armed forces that we know of that have been publicly moved into the Middle East have been defensively based. THAAD systems, F-22s, a large amount of U.S. Air Force aircraft largely outfitted for an air-to-air role. All of that's really defensive. It can be used to protect an offensive action, but most of it would be defensively based around Israel, like we have seen historically in the past. So going off of that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion, with what we're seeing in the area. It's possible, but I'd still would consider, based off of the current U.S. posturing, that's going to be highly unlikely. But moving on...
I gotta say, though, it's really good to see that action being taken, because this is actually one of the boldest moves I've seen the U.S. make in quite some time to try to build up some level of deterrence in the Middle East. And obviously, we've had ships over there for the last month or so. We've also had fighter jets, but sending over B-52s, a long-range strategic bomber, that does send a little bit of a different message, like you're saying, Enforcer. And I'm glad to see that being moved into place. At least if it's not going to be used, at least it will provide some level of deterrence to at least make Iran think twice before launching another major attack on Israel. But the real question is, like the poll was asking, are we actually going to use it? And is Iran going to believe that we would use that? And right now, I think Iran's going to probably call our bluff on that. So we might be forced to either let them call our bluff or actually send them in and actually show that we mean business.
Maybe so, but still, at the same time, while it's a bit bold, at the same time, it's not really that bold, in my opinion, because bold is making a statement about it, saying we're moving these bombers there to bomb you if you get out of line. That's a very bold thing to do, but just quietly moving the bombers over there and allowing the situation to continue to spiral out of control, it's like, that doesn't really seem that bold to me. It's just kind of like someone in the cabinet, probably in the Department of Defense, is like, look, we have to have some sort of a fail-safe where we can offensively strike them if need be, and there's a little bit of a consideration being given to it, and that's why they're being moved over there, but it's not anything that is showing this is the objective. Like, we are going to deal with the Iranians once and for all because they're getting out of line. It's not really coming off like that. It's just coming off like we're quietly moving stuff over there in smaller numbers, to be entirely honest, because a couple of B-52s and one fighter squadron could hypothetically take on Iran, knock out its airspace, and also strike critical targets, but at the same time, it isn't an overwhelming show of force that would really get the Iranians to pretty much cower or, whimper away from the situation. I don't think it's going to be doing that.
Oh, well, I mean, that is true. It's definitely not like a super forceful response, but it's better than nothing. And so far, we haven't done much deterrence in the Middle East, hardly at all. So the fact we're doing this whatsoever is a step in the right direction, at least. It's really not like the perfect thing to do. Like you said, it's kind of quiet. It's sort of under the radar a little bit. Like, we hear about it, but it's not like, bam, like we're here and we're going to come get you if you do something. It's not quite that severe, but it is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I would say it certainly is a step in the right direction, but I think they need to go a little bit further. So I guess the general message I'm trying to give is good steps forward, still not enough. They need to go a little bit more further with this idea that they're having right here. But moving on out of the Middle East and out of the news that we have there today, it's time for us to move on to the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, where they drink coffee made of snow. And out of Pyongyang today, we were able to hear something that honestly blew me away. And many of y'all will be like, oh, it must be the statement that they were backing the Russians. No, it's actually the statement that they have a foreign minister. I did not ever know that North Korea actually had a foreign minister. Like, did you know that, Matthew? Because this was literally news to me today.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. Like, what do they even do? Like, is this the first time they've ever had like a mission to another country?
I think so, because, like, as many of y'all will know, the North Korean government is a government like any other, and they do have some embassies in foreign countries, or some consulates at least, but I have never heard of any diplomats, or a foreign minister for that matter, from North Korea by name. Usually that's a very deliberate thing in Korea. They usually never mention the names of people who are working in the government, or actors even in their movies, because they don't want to pull any attention or any admiration away from the Kims. So usually no one's name is ever mentioned anywhere in the government, anywhere in the military, or really in any sector for that matter. So hearing that we actually got to see that the foreign minister of North Korea came out today and did something is pretty shocking, because to be entirely honest, I didn't even know that these people even existed. But nevertheless,
That lady's got the easiest job in the history of diplomacy, because she's probably been asleep, like for the most part, having this job, because there has been no diplomacy in the past requiring a foreign minister. But now all of a sudden she's woken up after many, many years of having nothing to do in her job, and all of a sudden she's shaking hands with Horseman over here.
man, dude, she literally sat there and like collect a paycheck probably for like 2 decades. And then finally they're like, you have to go and talk to someone. And then she was like, what? Wait a minute, I'm supposed to do that? Like, we don't do that here. And then she went out here and then shook hands with this guy who looks like a horse. Or honestly, he looks like the Glop today. He looks horrendous, man. Like some
Man,
fat.
that's unfortunate, man. The first assignment she gets, she's going to meet with Lavrov. It's like you couldn't have had a worse assignment for your first one in ages.
Man, dude, and she better wash her hand after that, because who knows where those have been. Like, ugh. But beyond that, we did get to hear that North Korea's foreign minister, who's named Cho Son-hui, during talks with the Russian foreign minister Sergei Lavrov in Moscow, stated, from the very beginning of the special military operation, the respected comrade chairman of the state affairs of the DPRK, Kim Jong-un, gave instructions that we, without looking back at anyone, should invariably and powerfully support and provide assistance to the Russian army and the Russian people in their holy war. And I gotta tell you, man, there couldn't have been more embellishment on any of that statement than you put. This sounds as though, man, like they're so far up someone's ass, their nose is turning brown. In fact, their entire face is covered in brown. I've never seen this much brown nosing in my life. The comrade chairman, well, actually, the respected comrade chairman of state affairs of the DPRK, Kim Jong-un. Like, that is an entire sentence in itself, man, just to get to the point of saying Kim Jong-un.
You got to make sure you stroke the ego of the great leader, because if you don't, you could come back and find yourself out of a job and out of a life.
You know, actually, funnily enough, Matthew, we understand that she's already in a gulag. This was not enough praise, according to many North Koreans, and so she got sent straight to the camps. No consideration given beyond that. But still,
Seriously? Like,
oh no,
like you're joking.
I'm
Please tell me you're
kidding.
joking.
Yeah, I'm kidding.
Okay,
I'm kidding
I was about to say, damn, that's even more brutal than I'd imagine.
But it's not. It doesn't sound far fetched though, because you had to legitimately ask. You're like, for real? And I was like, nah. That's like, nah. That's not
he
for
did
real.
missile his uncle in the square. I mean, he launched missiles at his uncle, chained to a post. So I mean, you can't really underestimate anything with them.
Man, I mean, you can't really, to be entirely honest. But still, nevertheless, it seems as though the North Koreans are clearly coming out now, and they are making it very adamant, very clear that they do support the Russians 100%. Also, another thing that I would like to direct y'all to attention-wise is that the Russians are treating the North Koreans seriously. Like, very seriously at this point, and it is starting to show how desperate they're getting, because North Korea is known by many to not be a country of great prosperity. It's a very poor country that's downtrodden really over the past 50 years, and has never really seen a good moment in those 50 years. It's just been in constant decline, and it lives in a very impoverished kind of a lifestyle, really, for its average citizens. Nevertheless, the Russians are so desperate for any kind of foreign support or foreign materials and equipment that they are going to North Korea now and treating them like they're a serious major world contender. Like, that shows you how desperate the Russians really are. And what's even more desperate, Matthew, is that we have heard that while the Russians are giving the North Koreans food aid, which we know of in very large numbers, it appears that the North Koreans are trying to conduct, in their minds, something that would be a very generous thing to the Russians. They are providing food aid of their own. Did you know that? To the Russians.
Let's hear what they're giving away, because they really don't have food to give away. I guess it's like boiled rocks or something.
It's actually very interesting. You may have been able to see it from that title. You may be able to see it from the title here. But I'm going to just let y'all see the video, not reading the subtitles. And then for everyone who is not watching the screen but is listening to the stream, I'm going to read it after we play the... Actually, you know what? I'm going to play the clip and read the subtitles first, and then we'll play it and not read the subtitles, so that we can just hear this Russian soldier talk about this. So, without further ado, here's the clip. Hello, I saw online that our guys got a hold of these cans and ate them. And here, our guys also got the same crap from our brotherly nation. They decided to try it, but one person thought to translate. He took a translator and found out that it's dog meat, damn it! Meat of an effing dog. They ate it, damn it, and they didn't even know what they were eating. Next time...
Like steak.
You can translate this crap and find out what you're putting in your mouth.
Well, I mean, hold on a second. It's not like the Russians eat like fine dining on a regular basis. They were just eating pig snout yesterday. I would say this is an improvement.
I'm not going to lie, man. I was thinking of a little baby Sheba being minced up and put in this can when I was watching this clip, and I was like, that's just vile. And they were like, here's this Democratic People's Republic of Korea delicious meat. And it's like, it's freaking dogs, like stray dogs off the street. Like, they're eating the dogs. Like,
isn't it laughable how all of a sudden the Russians get around a country that's even more or less fortunate than they are, and all of a sudden they get real choosy all of a sudden and stuff like that. Like, can you believe this? Like, these people are eating dog meat. It's like, dude, you were eating pig the other day, like pig snout. And also, y'all don't even have weapons or ammunition or anything. So it's like, don't start acting uppity now. You're like on the same level.
Man, meanwhile, over in a prior debate had in America, the North Koreans, they're questionable people, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. It's like, dude, he said that's actually might be true at this point. But now I'm going to play the clip without me reading on the subtitles, so that way y'all can hear the absolute bewilderment of this guy as he tells everyone this is dog meat. So here's the clip again.
Здравствуйте. Увидел в интернете, что раздобыли такие консервы наши ребята. И съели, и у нас тоже парни выняли у братского народа такую шнягу. И решили попробовать. Но один человек додумался перевести, взял переводчик и посмотрел, что это, блядь, мясо собаки, сука. Мясо ебаной собаки сожрали, блядь, и даже не знали, что они едят. В следующий раз перевести, блядь, можно эту херню и узнать, что ты ложишь себе в рот.
Now, I'm not gonna lie, man, this is like the most pissed off I've ever heard a Russian on clip before. Like, I've never heard one that emotional. This guy is actually pissed that they gave them dog meat. Like, I'm not gonna lie, though, like, that is actually kind of a step up from eating a pig snout. You know, like, you can't get any lower than that. But still, it is pretty wild to see that the North Koreans are trying to pose themselves as like, oh, look, here's the delicious food aid from the Democratic People's Republic of Korea as the Russians drink their coffee made of snow. And it's literally dogs that they're chopping up and putting in these cans. Like, you can't get that much more desperate to start eating dogs. Like, you know, like
was it Chihuahua? Was it Husky? Do we know, like, the species?
From what we understand, it's good old classic mutt. And so the North Korean brand is mutt on, because they were putting that mutt on that thing. You know what I mean? But beyond that,
that's where they get mutton from. That's mutton.
That dude in North Korean, mutt on takes an entirely new meaning compared to the rest of the world. But still, one has to be putting this into mind. The North Koreans eat dogs. Like, no joke. Apparently the Russians are finding it out. I didn't know that. This is actually news to me. They're eating dogs. Now, I do want y'all to know this, because I know many people are going to say, well, don't the Chinese eat dogs? That is something that actually came out pretty recently in Chinese history. Dogs were not commonly eaten in China. Dogs, like they were around the world, were considered pets up until the time of the Chinese Communist government taking over the nation, and then that's when dogs were considered a product of the bourgeoisie, and if anything, they they were relegated down to pretty much being eaten, especially during the Great Leap Forward when the famine started to rack the entirety of China. We started to see that people, specifically within southern China, started to eat dogs at a much higher frequency. But it was a bit of a food of desperation. Some people took a liking to it, and nowadays dogs are eaten far less frequently within southern China than they have been historically. But generally, the standard is across the world, you don't eat dogs. Like, unless if you are, like, desperate for food, which also Vietnam eats dogs as well, but once again, more of an act of desperation than anything, you don't eat dogs. It's just like a general rule. So for the North Koreans to actually have a industrialized meat packing plant that is slaughtering dogs and then canning the meat, it's showing that North Korea truly does not have food. Like, you just don't do that. Like, even in China, eating dogs, like, or the eating of dog meat never was something that was on an industrialized scale. It was always something done by locals in a village somewhere that were starving, and so they would, slaughter a dog and then cut it up and eat it. But you never seen industrialized freaking dog meat packing plant. Like, that's just showing how bad off they really are in North Korea. Like, what the hell are they even feeding these dogs? Like, do they just have, like, a black market kibble trade with China to, like, fatten up the dogs and then slaughter them? I have no clue. But still,
I'm surprised they had the ability to like can it up in an industrial fashion like that, because that requires some production lines, some tin cans. Also, they got to print out the label for it. It's just like seriously, I know we're like kind of making fun of it a little bit, but really it is sick. Like, they really are killing dogs in mass like that, and then canning them up and sending them to Russia. That is like really, really sick. But also, like, if that's the best they've got to send their most esteemed comrades in Russia, like you're saying, Enforcer, they must be like really having nothing to eat at all over there. Like, who knows what they're actually eating on a daily basis, like the normal civilians over there, especially the ones in the hostile class that are like treated like crap over there. I wonder what they eat on a daily basis, because I know people said, oh, they get like a small allotment of rice, but I don't even know if they're getting that at this point.
well, they probably eat like some sort of like a watered down gruel or something like that, considering that
Oh,
usually is like the easiest thing to produce in mass. It's probably some sort of gruel that's just very watered down to make sure that it's filling, but it's not really calorically sufficient. That's probably what they're eating in North Korea for the most part, or a very, very small portion of rice, which is also very possible, considering that usually was the North Korean food standard, was a allotment of rice, and that was really it. No protein or anything else included. It's just straight up rice. But still, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what we know at the moment. But nevertheless, the North Koreans are not doing that good. And the Russians are also starting to realize that just on the person-to-person level, they're eating dogs, like on an industrial level. You just literally cannot make that up. But still, before we move on into the rest of the news that we got from inside of Russia today, from the Kursk Oblast, from the Su-34 being shot down, which we have to get into a great deal. Also, the little bit of news that we got in Moscow today of a little signal cabinet on fire. We love to see it. And we also got to see a little oil refinery getting hit. Well, actually, it was one of the bigger kind inside of Russia in the Don region. And we also got to see a little Rapucha-class landing ship getting salvaged today out of Feodosia. We do have a couple of questions to get to before then. So, Matthew, what do we got?
all right, so real quick, before we get to our super chat questions here, we do have a poll to address. It says, North Korea says it will stand by Russia until Ukraine is defeated. A very bold statement. And why is North Korea suddenly so motivated? So about 52% said it's the Russian nuclear technology that's motivating them, while 23% said they're on the brink of economic ruin and they need Russia's assistance, while 19% said North Korea simply wants to build influence and start getting in the world sphere. And really, like, this is anybody's guess. Like, I would like to, like, pick an answer here and say which one I really believe, but honestly, I'm really not sure. I would tend to think that maybe they're on the brink of economic ruin. Like the enforcers mentioned before, they do need food, and right now, with them sending out dog meat to other countries as a form of a gift, that's actually pretty believable. They might actually need the food really, really badly. And also, they might be running out of money, because they always have to keep the black market running in North Korea, selling drugs and all kinds of horrific things to try to raise money for the Kim regime. And they might be running very low to the point where they're desperate and they have to turn to Russia and do whatever's necessary to try to raise up some funds. That could be it as well, and that's kind of what I'm leaning towards, or at least that's my best guess. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it's not doing good for them. I would say that the North Koreans are probably on the brink of some form, well, probably not on the brink of economic ruin, but they certainly are not doing well. And it's probably got a load of reasons. Honestly, I would say it's probably all three of these options. They're on the brink of economic ruin. They want to build influence, and they also want some Russian nuclear technology. They probably also want food in return, because the thing is, Matthew, when you think about it, like, if they want food, I'm sure the North Koreans kind of consider dog meat to be on the bottom of the food tier. So if they're going to send anything, it would be dog meat, and hopefully they'll get better Russian food aid in exchange. Maybe. Or maybe one thing that may be even more plausible is that that was a North Korean ration that was given almost as an MRE, and so that North Korean tried to trade it off on another Russian so that way he could get some better food from them, so that way he wasn't having to eat dog meat. Maybe that was what happened. And so if that
You think he conned them to get better food?
dude, you bet, man. He was like, "Oh, you have a pig snout? Well, I have this delicious sliced meat right here. Why don't we trade?" And the Russians were like, "Oh, sweet. Yeah, we would rather take that than the pig snout plate." And so then they got it, and they were like, "What is that?" And then they looked it up, and they're like, "Ooh!" And then they just like started throwing up and stuff. But yeah, I mean, that may have been what it was. But I still think that the North Koreans are probably doing it for all three reasons. They're probably trying to get some sort of food aid. They're also trying to make sure to get some influence with the Russians a little bit more to keep the aid flowing. And not only that, they're probably desperate for some good nuclear technology, so that way they can make sure that their threats against the United States have a little bit more validity behind them than they have in the past. But still, I hope that does address that well. And Matthew, I understand that we have some absolutely busting questions from the chat tonight. So what do we got?
All right, so our first busing question of the night is going to go to a channel legend. It is Dustin Mayo, who throws in a very massive $200 donation, and he throws it in very good. Thank you very much, Dustin, for the throwing in of the support. He said, I'm going to take a risk and assume that Putin still has the International Criminal Court warrant against him, and I say just send in a SEAL Team 6 to go grab him.
Oh, man. I thank you for the massive support, Dustin Mayo. But I would say do not send in SEAL Team 6 to go grab Putin. I would be honest, that would not go well. Like, just in my opinion, it would not go well. Because for them to fly low enough to make it to where Putin is, they would have to take a helicopter. A helicopter probably wouldn't have the range to make it that deep into Russia to get to him. Not only that, it probably would get shot down along the way because it has such a long distance to go. Someone would spot a Black Hawk or some other form of a helicopter carrying them and would call that in. They would phone that thing in. The other thing is,
if they didn't phone it in, it would probably crash on its own.
Yeah, the Blackhawks aren't really doing good these days. Then if they made it, let's say to Moscow where he is, and they tried to grab him, then once he's grabbed, everyone in Russia is going to know that he's grabbed and that they can get him back. And so they will be working as hard as they can to get him back the entire way they're trying to make it out of the country. So from what I would say, that would be really tough to do. But I would tell you that it is true that the ICC, the International Criminal Court, still has a warrant out for his arrest. Although it seems that the ICC has degraded their, well, at least their sway that they have in the world or influence, because they also put out an arrest warrant for Netanyahu, which was met with a lot of ire by many countries, including the United States, because it didn't really make that much sense. That's like saying someone defending their country after it was attacked and a massacre occurred of thousands is the same as a literal war criminal and a genocidal maniac. But still, thank you so much for that incredibly massive support, Dustin Mayo, and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and making this channel a reality, because if it was not for folks like you who went out of their way to support this channel, we would not be able to make this thing possible each and every single day. It's only thanks to folks like you who have supported this channel for years that we're able to make this thing a reality and keep this thing running. And not only that, while I can say on the channel that, in my opinion, the Russians probably would not, not lay down with SEAL Team 6 coming in and taking Putin, one thing that we can say is that Russia is going to be running into some tough times here very soon. And Russia may end up becoming a little bit small, maybe even really small, long-lasting small. And one thing that's always important to remember is that while Russia is going to be small, we do have to rejoice at this because it is in the benefit of the American and Western world as a whole. And if you do want to rejoice in that, of course, with the Enforcer channel, please make sure to get your Make Russia Small Again t-shirt today.
Oh my goodness, it's a merch plug. I didn't see that coming.
Oh, dang, man. You didn't see that coming like the Russians didn't see that FPV drone coming in. Man, it just slammed them dead on. Damn. But nevertheless, this thing is absolutely amazing. It is, of course, a Gildan t-shirt. One of the best t-shirt cuts that you can get out there. One of the best. I walked into the room and I said, wow, that's a great cut of t-shirt. And it was the best. It was the greatest. And we, of course, got the only greatest kinds of cotton that you could get for this thing. It is 100% American cotton from the United States of America. You just can't get any better than that. I mean, I'm telling you what, American cotton better than that Egyptian cotton that might supposedly be pro-Russian a little bit. You never know. But nevertheless, this stuff is absolutely incredible. Look at this model wearing this t-shirt. It's incredible, isn't it? It looks amazing. It really does.
I like how that guy's got his hand is like right there in his pocket. It's not quite in the pocket. Like, I don't really understand the logic behind that, but you know, I respect that. I respect it.
It's halfway in, halfway out, kind of like U.S. policy in the Middle East. But nevertheless,
call him Turkish.
Oh no, man, he's a Turk. But moving on from that, it is an amazing piece of kit that we have here. It is a wonderful shirt and a beautiful one. And 10% of all of the profits from the sales will be donated to United 24 to help them out in continuing the war effort in Ukraine and hopefully seeing victory sometime in the future. Not only that, but if you click the Order Now button, you can get a wide variety of options. Of course, Henry Ford said it best. You can have a Model T in any color you want as long as it's black. But we don't just provide the color black on this t-shirt. Oh, no. We provide the color navy for the folks who may feel a little bit maritime today. Maybe Walter A. Lakota would like this shirt. We also have one in military green, just in case you were feeling like Volodymyr Zelensky on pretty much any other day of the week. We also have one in charcoal, just in case you were feeling like working in the coal mines wasn't good enough for you. You can always get yourself a shirt that tells people you work in the coal mines. Although charcoal is a product of burning wood until it gets down to its basic carbon element, you can still say that you work in the coal mines. And many people here in this part of the United States, especially in the Appalachian Mountains, would love to get themselves a charcoal colored t-shirt. Charcoal, and really coal as a whole, specifically anthracite coal, was pretty much the story of the entirety of the Appalachian Mountain region, although bituminous coal was also seen in some numbers within the Appalachian Mountains during the time that coal mining was a very large endeavor in the area. It's not as big as it once was, but hey, one can dream. Nevertheless, we also have one in sand color. Just in case if you thought that going to war with Iran was a great idea, we have a color that will make you blend into the Iranian landscape with a sand-colored Make Russia Small Again t-shirt. Or better yet, if you're ever wanting to wander around anywhere in the direction of Volgograd or Astrakhan, you can always get a desert-colored or a sand-colored t-shirt to make sure that you blend in a little bit better in that area. We also have one in coral silk, just in case if for some reason you were wanting to make people a little bit confused if this was some sort of a slogan for the Alabama football team, or if you were wanting to make people think you may possibly be a commie. We also have one last color, which is tropical blue. For all those folks out there that may be in the Pacific, there's no one living in the Atlantic except for in Bermuda, you would just be dead. But if you are in the Pacific, we have a tropical blue color for you. It's a beautiful color, it's a long-lasting color, and there just truly is no better options than these. We just have the best colors that we could get for this t-shirt, and not only that, they come in a wide variety of sizes, from small to 5XL. There's literally endless options with these t-shirts at an endless amount of combinations, and they ship just about anywhere and everywhere in the world as well. They ship to Australia, Austria, Belgium, Canada, the Czech Republic, big shout out to Jan Leposki, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, Hong Kong, Ireland, Israel, Italy, Japan, Malaysia, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Poland, Portugal, Singapore, South Korea, Spain. Some people live in Spain without the S, by the way. Sweden, Switzerland, the United Arab Emirates, the United Kingdom, and the good old US of A, as you all know. They are $25 US dollars a pop. The price does change to reflect $25 US dollars in different nations' currencies. So, for example, if you click the Swiss as an option, it actually shows the amount in Swiss francs, which is actually 23 Swiss francs. But nevertheless,
and also, if you get one right now, we might ship one to Putin and give him one for his own collection.
We might. I can't guarantee that.
But can't guarantee that, by the way, because we don't know his address, even though it's literally right there on the map. But thing's called the Kremlin.
And of course, also, one more thing that I have to throw in, you can get an unlimited number of these things. If you wanted to support an entire party of people wearing these things, maybe an entire rally of people wearing these things, maybe an entire army of people wearing these shirts, you can buy the number that you need. Just make sure to adjust the right colors and sizes for the folks who need them. But nevertheless, if you do want to get one of these shirts, please do. It does support the channel massively and also supports Ukraine as well. You can click on the link in the description below and go straight to our website. It's the first link down in our stream description, and you can get yourself one of these amazing t-shirts. But still, please make sure to get one while y'all can. This limited edition run is going to be ending at the end of the day tomorrow, at least at this moment. We may extend it. I've seen some people asking that it be extended just a little bit so that way they can try and get one. We might extend it, but for now, we are pretty dead set on this thing ending tomorrow at the end of tomorrow night's stream. And so with that, I hope that does give y'all that obligatory plug merch. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of this segment.
All right, so this one's going to go to the Ghost of Kiev, a very notorious fighter jet pilot who put in a $20 donation. And also, it's good to hear you from you once again, Ghost of Kiev, and thank you very much for that $20 support. And I said, will the U.S. global supremacy be challenged to the point where we end up backing down from any of our allied defense treaty agreements?
I think we're kind of already at that point without us being challenged enough, and that's kind of what's been annoying about it, is that we're not being challenged considerably in most areas. If we just applied a little bit of pressure on our own, we would probably end up winning in most of these diplomatic confrontations, yet nevertheless, we never take them on. So I would actually say, in my opinion, we're kind of already at that point, but it's more so a mindset than it really is an actual kind of condition that exists out there in the world right now. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can, in my opinion. And I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And so a big thanks to you once again. And we are on to the final question of this night, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news.
All right, and also Rodney Hikes asked in the live chat, he said, Enforcer Matt, how much is that shirt in rubles, LOL? I think that would be at least 1 milli. It'd be unaffordable for the average Russian. I think they would have to go and take out a loan. But no, I don't think the Russians can afford the shirt. I think it would be a little bit too high. Also, and the Enforcer asked to please turn on the air. The air is actually blowing right now. It's it's blowing. Well, I won't make that joke, but it's on right now. But also, I don't make a hot dog man joke. I'll pass. I think y'all know where I was going with that one. But anyways, the next one here goes to Jody Mandelias, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Jody, for the $20 support. We appreciate it. And she said, thanks for all the news. And LSA, LSA, LSA.
And thank you so much for the support, Jody Mandelias, in supporting this channel and enjoying the news that we put out. We put a great deal of effort into this every single day. We are always working behind the scenes to make sure that this news is put out as accurately and as efficiently as it possibly can. And today, of course, we made sure to work as hard as we possibly could to get this news put together and out to each and every single one of y'all. And I got to thank you so much, Jody, for being one of those people who has greatly enjoyed this channel and the news that we put out, because we always make the news for folks like you. Every single person that's here right now. We have 9,300 people here at the moment, and we are always happy to have each and every single one of y'all. YouTube just shows us numbers, and it's very easy for a lot of people to just look at viewership as a number. But I always know that behind each and every single number is a actual person who puts a lot of stock and faith into this channel and our news coverage, and we always take that seriously every single day. And I thank you so much for being one of those people, Jody, that appreciates that massively and is supporting this channel to help us to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, thank you so much once again. Long live the Leah Spring Army. And with that, it's time for us to move on into the rest of the news. Moving on into Moscow, just to give you all a short little note, we were able to see that partisans are attacking relay cabinets inside of Moscow for the signal boxes, and we can see them on fire right here. Nothing much more to be said about that, but still nice to see partisan activity even within the heart of Moscow. Meanwhile, we're going to be moving on into a story that got a lot of attention today, and we have to debunk it. We generally don't take it as a mission to debunk stories, but whenever we're asked by a load of people to talk about a story that did not happen, we then have to run the story for the large part and tell everyone that it didn't happen. And while I'm trying to see what the exact details were, just to double check really quickly that I am getting this correct, and let me see here. Yep, that is the one. So, many of y'all will have heard that a Ukrainian F-16 strikes down a Russian Su-34. Again, actually, it's the second time, according to what has been said today. And we have absolutely no proof to actually verify that an F-16 has ever shot down an Su-34, much less a second time. There has been a story that's come out today, and it's generally because of this. Well, actually, these are drones in Oriole, really quickly, but this story also happened around the same area again. But you can hear the Ukrainian drone in Oriole. But really quickly, let me move us over to Twitter really quickly, so that way we can make sure to find this statement that was made today by Fighter Bomber about an Su-34 being shot down, so that way I can show y'all literally all that we have on this at the moment. So let me see if I can find it, and let's see. Here we go. So this is it. This is the post. Like, this is the entire thing. It is Fighter Bomber, as usual, from Russia, saying Eternal Flight Brothers to a picture of an Su-34. That is all of the information that we got today. The only bit. All that we heard is that an Su-34 was lost. We don't know how it was lost. It could have been lost to Ukrainian air-to-air activity, which is highly unlikely. It could have been lost to Ukrainian surface-to-air activity, which is fairly likely. Or it could have been lost to a crash or some sort of pilot error, which is also somewhat likely. However, there's been a story circulating today, much like always, that this Su-34 was shot down by an F-16. And I have to be the one to tell y'all that that's not true at all. We don't know what this thing was shot down by. We don't even know why the Su-34 was lost at all. And we always have to come out because we got, like, I think 20 requests today to talk about the story, and a load of people telling us that this is breaking news, and there's been absolutely no validity or proof to the claim that an F-16 was lost. I have to say that over and over and over again, because this is literally the only thing we got about this today. We got no content really, or information from the Ukrainian MOD letting us know that an F-16 did shoot down the Su-34. We've never heard of a claim of that from the Ukrainian MOD a first time, or supposedly the second time, which is right now. And if the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense does not come out and say that an F-16 shot down this Su-34, even if we don't have video and picture evidence, we have to go with that. Like, if they've never come out and confirmed that, that is the story. An F-16 didn't shoot this thing down, it was something else, and the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense just doesn't want us to know. So saying that an F-16 shot this thing down, with the only proof being that there was a picture of an Su-34 put up by a fighter bomber today, and he said Eternal Flight Brothers, that is a stretch. Like, that is a massive stretch. And I don't mean to go out there, because some people will take this as I'm taking a shot towards a specific YouTuber that put this out today, and that's not necessarily the case. However, I'm not really a big fan of people putting out news that isn't true. Like, I get when people make exaggerated titles slightly, because usually that's just how YouTube works. But when you make a story that's completely fabricated and has no proof behind it that an F-16 shot down an Su-34, I don't really get why that would be the case. Another thing is that Su-34s don't even operate close enough in most areas to the front line these days for it to be engaged and shot down by an F-16. Like, for example, if we were to say that this thing was lost inside of Russia near the Kursk Oblast, these things are dropping glide bombs nearly 60 to 70 miles away from the front lines. Now, a Ukrainian F-16 is not going to be flying right along the active front line. They will be shot down. That's how it will work. Like, an F-16 is a great aircraft, but if it flies over an active front line, it's going to be shot down. So that means that the Su-34 is about at the maximum range if an F-16 was on the front line for an AIM-120 to be fired at it, and somehow an F-16 didn't just engage the Su-34 in that kind of condition, it shot it down. That's just highly unlikely. There's just no missiles that an F-16 carries at the moment with that kind of range, and also an Su-34 not conducting evasive maneuvers or being close enough for an AIM-120 to hit, which would most likely be the weapon that would take down an Su-34. There is no way in hell that an AIM-9X or an AIM-9M or any other variant of a Fox 3 or a Fox 1 like the AIM-7 would have been used to engage and shoot down that aircraft. And an AIM-9X, I believe, has a range of about 15 miles, and the AIM-7 has a range of maybe 50 miles or so. None of those missiles have the range to reach an Su-34 in the modern air combat environment that we're seeing in Ukraine. So the idea of an F-16 shooting down, or any Ukrainian aircraft shooting down that Su-34 is wildly unlikely. The more likely option is that Ukrainian ground air defense, which would have the range to reach out to an Su-34 and hit it about 70 miles away from the front line. That is an entirely plausible and possible story. But an F-16 doing that, or a Ukrainian aircraft at all doing that, is highly unlikely. That's almost impossible at this point in this war, and that's why I have to say, with 100% certainty, that is most likely a bogus claim, considering that this is the only proof we had that an Su-34 was even lost today at all. And so with that, I hope that does address that very well. Also, JSM said a Maverick. From what I understand, the F-16 does not carry the air-to-air version, I guess you could call it, of a Maverick, which would be a Phoenix. That was specifically for the F-14 Tomcat. And let me go pull up the AIM-54 right here so that way you can see it. This is the AIM-54 Phoenix. There is a weapon that looks very similar to this, which is the AGM-64, which is the Maverick. Well, actually, hang on. They're calling it a Hornet? Hold up. I mean, is it an AGM-62? No, it's the AGM-65. Yeah, there we go. This looks very similar to an AGM-54 or a Phoenix, an AIM-54. It looks somewhat similar, but still, this weapon is not currently in use with the United States Armed Forces. It's pretty much been replaced by the AIM-120. I don't even think any aircraft in the modern day in the U.S. Armed Forces are equipped to actually use an AIM-54 Phoenix for the large part. I believe the F-14 was the only one. If I remember correctly, the FA-18 uses AIM-120s. The F-16 and the F-15 certainly only use AIM-120s. These were only made for the F-14 for the large part, and I believe that these are only currently in service with the Iranian Air Force, if I remember correctly, on their F-14s. And even then, we think they're largely replacing those with R-27s and R-77s provided by the Russian Federation. But still, it's just impossible. Like, it's a completely impossible story. I don't know what's up with this because, like, I get it. People that specifically cover the Ukraine war sometimes like to embellish stories a little bit so that way people watch them. And I get that. Like, I'm not going to, like, disparage that. Like, you know, is it, like, the best thing? Not necessarily so. But titles and thumbnails usually almost always are a little bit embellishing a story from pretty much everyone. However, when you come up with one like that, like you just literally come up with a story out of thin air, that's where I have a problem, because it's like you're misinforming a lot of people and telling them something as it's true when there is no facts to back that up at all. But anyways, moving on from that and out of the area, we are going to be moving on down into Stavropol, where we were able to hear that a major refinery within the town, and let me make sure that I get this correct, Svetlograd, was hit. And we were able to see that after it hit the oil depot, there was some debris on the buildings nearby, showing that the explosion was incredibly severe. We were also able to see once again some of the damage caused to the local areas after the drone hit the oil depot. And moving on from that and into our last clip, we can actually see the drone hitting the oil depot here in this clip. And it was a significant hit.
That was a nice hit, man. I love to see that.
A long-lasting hit. But moving on from that, also really quickly, one more thing. I'm seeing some people say, let's see, you mean misleading? Misleading, well, here's the thing, though. Like, some people will say stuff like, this means war, or something like that, and the statement is... Because I've seen this, we've done this, I think, very few times, but it's generally when we're trying to make a claim about something, or most of the time we really don't. Like, most of our titles are pretty much dead on to what it is, and while sometimes it sounds crazy, usually we have stuff to back it up. Like Iran threatening nuclear war, they legitimately did today. There's a direct statement saying that they did something like that. Not really a lot of embellishment there. But if someone says something like, the Russians were destroyed in Kursk, like, I get it, because if they took high losses... You don't really have the room in a YouTube title to say the Russians took high losses, not destroying them, but still pretty good. Like, you don't have the room in a YouTube title to do that. So usually people will get to kind of summarizing it, but also slightly embellishing what happened, which I get and understand. I'm not going to ever, like, you know, complain about that because that's just kind of how it works. But when someone literally just fabricates a story, like, for example, Russian nuclear forces wiped out, Russia defanged. Like, that would be a complete lie. Like, or better yet, this one's a fairly common one that we always see, and it's always from like one channel every day. The nuclear bombers are flying, codes input, nuclear war is here. Like, that is a straight up lie. Like,
I
every
love how he
single
always
day.
knows that the codes have been put in too. It's like he just knows the codes have always been put in. He's always like, "Oh, it's on high alert. We gotta run, dig, go down deep to your bunker,
Yeah.
quick."
And for some reason, he's always able to get onto the radio channels that's coming through on, and they're not at all encrypted, or at least, non-public. Like, the codes will just come through on public, like, Bravo, Charlie, Zulu, Kilo. Oh, that's it. They're gonna nuke him. And it's like, what? It's like, that's not at all the case. Like, those are just completely misleading stories, and I just don't like that at all. Like, embellishing a little, I get it. Everyone does that, like, literally everyone, like Fox and CNN, they do it to an extreme degree, but everyone on YouTube does that. But just lying about a story that doesn't even have enough facts to back it up, that's just insane to me. I don't like that. But moving on from that and into Feodosia, we were able to see that the Russian Navy is having a really rough time. Many of y'all will know that a while ago, a Rapucha-class landing ship was actually destroyed and sank at its moorings here inside of the port of Feodosia, right here. And I actually think that is not a Rapucha-class landing ship right there. I forgot the class that is. It's like an alligator or something like that, but it is pretty close to being a Rapucha-class. But nevertheless, the Rapucha-class landing ship sank at its moorings just over here. And it has been stuck in this port for months now. And the Russians have been trying to bring out assessors to get an idea as to whether the ship is salvageable or repairable, and it appears that they've decided that the ship is only salvageable, meaning that they're going to cut the thing up, pretty much melt it down into its basic metal components, and then try and reuse that metal, or I guess you could say composites elsewhere. We've actually been able to see some pictures today showing us that the salvage operation is underway as they're cutting apart the ship into large pieces, transporting them onto the dock, and then shipping them out to be further disassembled and melted down for pretty much the scrap that it's worth at this point. It's showing us a couple of things with this. One, the ship was damaged to the point that it's not even repairable and is complete loss. The second thing that it's also showing us is that the Russian Navy does not have the ability probably to repair, from what we could tell, might be superficial damage, because while the ship was heavily damaged and it did sink, you can refloat vessels like this and repair them, because from what we saw, the damage was mostly to the superstructure, which had pretty much melted and caved inwards into the hull. But from what we know, the engines may have actually been salvageable, and the water, well, pretty much the hull above the waterline and a good bit above the waterline was also salvageable as well, but they did not recover the vessel or refloat it, maybe because they lacked the abilities to conduct major refits and repairs like that at this point. So it is starting to show us that the Russian Navy is in dire straits logistically and probably will not be able to support any prolonged naval engagements or naval action in the Black Sea beyond this point, without a doubt, due to the lack of logistical infrastructure. Moving on from that and into the Kursk Oblast, we are now getting into pretty much the rest of the Ukraine frontline news, and there was a good bit of it. Starting off with a little bit, we were able to see that the Su-34 was shot down. I actually did put that on the map. Apparently, I just clicked on the wrong link, but you can see the two right here. Once again, no kind of insinuation that these were shot down by F-16s. We didn't hear any of that from the Ukrainian government today. All there was just Eternal Flight Brothers, and that was it, with pictures of the Su-34. Moving on from that and into our next bit of news, we were able to see that while the Su-34 certainly was not shot down by the F-16, we did see that apparently the Su-34 may have been brought down by the absolute weight of this unit here on the ground, who practically has their own gravitational field at this point, which is Steven Seagal, who was currently inside of the Kursk Oblast today.
My God.
This man has a gut.
He does, man. Also, we're lagging like crazy, so that's why there's awkward silence. But this guy right here, I think has put on some pounds. I don't remember him being that big.
Also, like, Matthew, I don't think there's any lag. I just think that you started talking, I started talking, so I stopped talking, then waited for you to finish, and then you stopped, and then we just had, like, a weird silence. But still, this guy has gotten fat. Like, the last time we saw him, he wasn't even this close to being this plump. This guy's actually, like, competing with Kim Jong-un and Nikocado Avocado for, like, the fattest guy out there right now. I don't even know how in the world this could be the case, but this guy is eating something. What are they feeding him, man?
I don't even No, man. Like the fact that like poor chair is like putting up with that is just crazy to me. That chair is like holding it all together. And also, where do you find the nice chair from in the rubble pile like that?
I'm not gonna lie, man. Like, I think the Russian furniture makers may actually have a business after this because if they were able to make a chair that can support this guy, dude. They could maybe make a good business, elsewhere in the world,
Hopefully, he's not still teaching Bushido though, because like there's no way he's pulling off those Bushido moves like in this type of shape.
Probably not. Probably not at all. But dang, dude, he's let himself go. Like he was already letting himself go, but he has let himself go. Like that's bad. It's terrible, man. But moving on from that and into our next little bit of news, we were also able to see a little bit further down the Russians getting slammed by some FPV drones. And really quickly, apparently this is a little too sensitive for the stream, but Matthew, how am I coming through to you? Am I coming through well or not well?
You're coming in very delayed, and also occasionally it's popping in and out.
Well, at least there is a market improvement, though. But moving on from that and into the next clip, we were able to see the Ukrainians shoot down a Gran, which was also deleted as well. We were running into bad luck here in these clips. But moving on from that, we were able to see the Russian casualty report in our location unknowns, which was the only location unknown that we had today.
Oh!
Holy moly!
Oh, man, we got 9 Bobcats. Look at that. It's a great day for Bobcat losses out here. It's Kubota, it's Bing Shaling, it's something. We don't know what it is, but they were skid steers and they were taken out. But Enforcer, tell us more about these clever losses right here.
And man, it was a great day out there in the wonderful land of Ukraine. And also, let's hear, I saw someone say something about that Nikocado avocado guy. Really quickly, I have to check on this because if I remember correctly, that video was a lie, at least from what I remember. And let's see here. Oh, wait a minute. No, actually, it wasn't. Huh. All right. That's interesting. So I heard that it was a lie. It looks like there was a short put out that apparently he said he lied and then he just didn't. I don't know what's up with that guy. But anyways, moving on from that, we were able to get that the keeper of the records, Miss Disa, put together the records today and saw that some things were getting on up there towards the top, with 1,460 Russian soldiers wounded and killed being the 12th highest troop loss ever over the war, and the 7-day average is around 1,500 with a total of 10,500 Russian soldiers wounded and killed, which is equivalent to about 3 Western Brigade combat teams. And beyond that, no records really got even close to being the top today in any other category, but still they were decent numbers. And once again, going through the rest of them, 1,460 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed in the past 24 hours, along with 20 APCs, 77 supply trucks, 6 main battle tanks, 26 artillery pieces, 25 drones, 1 MLRS, 1 cruise missile, and the 9 Bobcat skid steers. Overall, it looks as though the losses are pretty decent, and we are expecting that they will remain fairly high on in the future. Moving on from that and over to Vovchansk, we were able to see the Ukrainian air defense at Voik. And check this out. We're going to be muting the clip because it has some copyrighted audio in it, but we can see the Strela firing at a Russian drone, and any second now. And it just shows us the drone that it supposedly shot down. I don't really think we got to see it, actually. And do we see it at all? I didn't. So that's
we'll have to assume that it's a good Strela. It's a good hit.
Strela! But moving on from that into Vovchansk, we also got to see them hitting Russian forces on the northern side of town. And you can see the Russian positions here. And we can see the Russian position continuously being slammed by Ukrainian artillery. Of course, Vovchansk has largely ceased to exist as a town and is pretty much a large field of debris, but every once in a while there is a standing building that the Russians are trying to hide in on the northern side, and it appears that the Ukrainians are making sure to make those buildings join the rebel piles on the ground. And when you see the Ukrainians making their way through the rubble as the sun begins to set, you see them still moving forward. Literally nothing is left of Vovchansk. I think Vovchansk may be more destroyed than even Bakhmut or Avdiivka was during those battles. It's pretty much completely flattened at this point. Like, quite literally, I've never seen it to where entire blocks are literally reduced to the foundations. Even in Bakhmut and Avdiivka, there were some buildings that did survive at least a little. These are not even surviving at all. Now, you see some tunnel fighting going on here. We see someone crawling out. It looks like a Russian that's surrendering, actually.
Oh, looks like maybe a couple of them.
A lot of them, actually. Like an entire fire team of them. That's a large number.
Hi-ho. Hi-ho. Off to camp we go.
Hi-ho. Hi-ho. That's not a song. That's just them saying hello to Chris's mom. But moving on from that.
Hi-ho. Hi-ho.
And that's it. Like, there's no extra part to it, no lyrics or anything. But moving on down and into Kupiansk, we were able to see a BMP-1 slamming some Russian forces. And just look at this. Aw, man. They get the Jungle Book music, so we have to mute it. But we can see them driving on through. We can actually see the specialized BMP-1 with a BTR-4 turret moving through as well. And boy, they're booking it, man. Like, dang.
They are flying, man. Kicking up that dust, I'm telling you. It looks majestic.
These look to be dead sunflowers, actually, that they're driving through. And now they're starting to lay it on them Russians.
Do you think brass is a good fertilizer for these sunflowers?
I think it may be a good supplement. You know, like, help them to kind of get a little bit more swole, you know?
Man, it's like a pre-workout with caffeine and, you know, all that good stuff.
Man, the sunflower's like, man, I freaking love brass. It's like, dude, they're gonna like be like jacked and roided, like Wes Weston or whatever the hell his name is or something.
Man, these sunflowers are gonna have so much brass. They're gonna be talking about what color is your guy?
Oh no, oh no, dude, they're gonna be sitting there talking about. You see, I don't. Let's see, what did that guy say that was stupid, dude? Honestly, everything he says is stupid. You see, I don't really like women. I only care about what men think about me or something like that. It's like, that's kind of weird, but all right. It's like, aren't you like a pimp? It's like, that's a little weird.
Oh, that was a good one.
Also, Y Canando said, does the Enforcer play War Thunder? Yes, I do. It's a fun game. And we can see them just putting heat down. I mean, it's just an endless amount, long-lasting heat. This BMP-2 is eating Russians, man.
Man, they let it rip and they said, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And moving on to the next Russian.
Well, you see this BMP-1 giving them the works up close. And you see their specialized BMP-1, I think it's a T, is moving through the sunflower field again, moving on to its next spot of Russians that start laying out low.
Laying out low. That's a new one.
Lay them low. That's really what I was trying to say. And we see it pass over a trench. Oh my lord, dude. Dude, that thing got air. Did you see that? Look at that. Dude, that was sick.
Oh, man. That was hard to bass think.
Dude, we got freaking Evel Knievel driving a BMP-1 out here. I like that, though. Dude, I'll actually be honest with you, Matthew. I've been watching some alpha male stuff recently, and I gotta tell you, man, that space is probably one of the most cringe ones I've ever seen. Like, no joke, it's just cringe.
Man, if you'll just go to, like, Conman University or something like that, you'll get really ripped. Like, forget the roids, kids. The roids isn't where it's at. It's that con man tactics. That's where it's at. You're not a real man unless you escape the system and start being a criminal.
Yeah, dude, like, it's good to pay $20 a month to just have someone berate you and tell you that you're poor, and if only you're rich, all your problems will go away, but they never tell you how to get rich or solve your problems. It's like, this is a win-win right here. I'd see nothing wrong with this. But moving on from that, and on into our next bit, a little bit further down the line, towards Bodanivka, just outside of Bakhmut, we were able to see a Russian BMP getting destroyed down here. I don't know what was up with that opening frame, because you never see it again through the whole video, I think. But one thing you do see is that goofy Willem Dafoe meme that I always talk about, and you'll see it here in a second. Here it is. It's right over there on the right side. There's the Russian BMP. And it does the freaking Willem Dafoe thing. Like, look. And then it gets blown up.
Well, I'm something of a scientist myself.
Oh, dude. I gotta say, though, I respect Willem Dafoe. I think he's a good actor.
Man, Willem Dafoe, he's on point.
My favorite
Willem
one.
Dafoe, I saw a video of him yesterday, man. He's really about that drip or drown, you know what I mean? He was walking some kind of like red carpet or something somewhere, like playing the villain or something. That man was dripping.
Let's see. Willem Dafoe, Rip or Drown. Let me see if I can go pull that up, because you know it's going to be there. Let's see here. Dude, where the... Oh, dude! This picture... Man, oh, dude, this is the picture. Drip or Drown, and my man is swimming right here.
That's not the one, but that's one similar to it. He was walking like some type of red carpet or fashion show thing somewhere, and he was like playing the villain for one of those fashion houses. I think it was,
Oh, right here!
Prada. Yeah, there. Well, yeah.
No, that's not it. That's not it.
That's
No.
not that. There it is, right there. The one with the red carpet, right there.
Yeah, this one. Yeah, dude, that was a good one. I've seen this one before. That was a good one. Classic, even. Classic.
That was good. They brought out all the villains for that one. That was actually pretty smart. Like, I'm not into like the whole clothes thing at all, but that was actually pretty good.
Yeah, that was not bad. I was like, that's actually a pretty good one right there. But moving on from that, though, sure, little Willem Dafoe aside, we did also get to see a Ukrainian helicopter firing at Russian positions near Touretsk today. And we're going to be meeting that, but you see the Mi-8 doing its work. Also, by the way, I like let's see, Willem Dafoe in The Lighthouse. I always thought that was a great movie because, like, it was like the most psychedelic movie I've ever seen about a lighthouse ever. Don't go to the light winds flow. It's like, why not? And then he goes up there and he just falls off the side and his intestines get picked out by, like, seagulls or something. It's like, this is the weirdest movie. But it was not bad. It was not bad at all. But moving on from that and a little bit further on down and into the area, a little bit behind the lines near Volodar, we were able to see a Ukrainian Mi-24 flying over the road. And just look at him go.
For a minute, I thought this was a motion picture camera. I thought that was like a film reel on top of it.
Nah, that's the gun sight right there. Pretty cool, though.
Dang, that is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty neat. It's like an old World War II gun sight. Nearly, honestly, it's not that much different than really any modern one, but they are clunky when you really look at them. But moving on from that, we also got to see the Russians getting slammed near the area of Volodar by the Shadow Wizard Money Gang. And any second now, it's about to be their time.
Man, you make it look easy.
Real trap shit. Walk with your boys. Damn,
son. Where'd you find this?
And let's
damn.
Man, he did for real, man. We both let the awkward silence happen, and then we're both at the same time like, man, this has to end, and then we both start talking simultaneously.
You know when you say something that doesn't hit quite right, you're like, yeah, damn, son, where'd you find this? And it's like complete awkward silence for like 5 seconds. You're like, yeah, damn. It's just like awkward as hell.
Man, it kind of is, honestly. But I was just sitting there. I was like, man, I was about to start narrating the video, and I was like, I'll let you like do your like segment and then start narrating it, and then you went, damn, son. And I was like, oh, okay. And, oh my lord, then they got clustered. Man, this is a win-win all around down there. The Shadow Wizard Money Gang does not play games. And a second one, just for good measure. And that's the end of the clip. And moving on from that and into our next one inside of Volodar, we also got to see some older footage from Volodar. Volodar has since fallen, but we were able to see these Ukrainians with the trap music in the background, taking some shots at some Russians down low. And we see the Russians making runs for the building right there. And he made it in.
They made a run on the banks, but it wasn't the bank. It was a run on the battlefield.
Hello, Russian. What is your name? My name is Rab Banks. It's like, oh.
Rab Banks. And also, this is my ski mask over here. Say hello.
This is my friend over here called Ben Dover or something like that. It's like, oh no, is that Diddy?
Man, that's not Bliata, man. That's Diddy.
Wait a minute. What's up with that guy? What does he have? What does he have? Oh, wait, hold on, dude. I need to go find Vietnam helmets. Let me go look at this. Because I'll tell you something, man. I got a theory here, all right? Let's see here. Should be able to find it eventually. Usually, there is a helmet out there somewhere that would have a bottle on the side of it. And I want to find a picture of it, all right? I got to find a picture of it now. Here it is. Nah, that's not really it. There was usually like a bottle. Wait a minute, is that it? Nope, that's not it either. That's like the same helmet. Hang on, y'all. I got to find this thing. Holy moly. There it is! That's a bottle of gun oil. If Diddy was in Vietnam, that would be a bottle of baby oil right there. Like that would be his thing, dude. He would be like, oh, we took some Vietnamese prisoners. Oh, man. You hear him start cracking his knuckles, and like even the Vietnamese would be like, oh, man. Like, I'd rather go back now. I want to go home.
Ask, why do you have so much baby oil? Like, what's up with this? You got gallons over here in the corner. He said, look, man, that's like to buy bulk. You know, I like to save some money.
Oh, man. Dude, he's like, we're Costco guys. Of course we buy baby oil in bulk. It's like, no, you don't. So they don't even sell it.
And then Costco's like, you're not a Costco guy. You're a pure phony. We don't even sell baby oil. It's like, what are you talking about?
Also, Kolchak said his call sign is the Diddler. It'd even better yet, a play on a movie that came out in the time of Vietnam. His call sign would be something. I'm not gonna make that joke. That one might be a little bit too much. But moving on from that, we did get to see a clip from United 24 of an AS-90 at work. Hopefully, the music is licensed. I pray. And so, without further ado, here we go.
So you just saw the British AS-90 self-propelled howitzer in action. It belongs to the Ukrainian 116th Mechanized Brigade, and now we are going to talk to the crews about its performance.
It has a fairly fast aim, due to the fact that the calculation on the tablet takes literally 2 minutes. And if you get the hang of it, you can calculate the target position in a minute. It is transmitted to the gun, and the gun is aimed with just a few clicks on the computer screen. It's not without its problems, because there are issues with the tracks, as they are not very suitable for our conditions, because of all the mud.
The AS-90 entered service with the British Army in 1992 and has since been deployed in various conflicts, including the Gulf War and operations in the Balkans and Afghanistan. Over the years, the vehicle has undergone several upgrades, ensuring its relevance in modern warfare. The Ukrainian crew learned to operate this machine during a training course in Great Britain.
During the initial training, I was a gunner. Our instructor was Reggie. The learning experience was pretty cool. Hey, Reggie.
Hey, yo, what's up, Reggie? Here from the trenches of Zaporizhia. We beating ass. Like something like that.
According to British standards, there should be 6 people, but we decided on 5 people. This includes a gunner commander, a gunner, 2 servicemen, and a mechanic driver.
Снаряди. 795. Да. Він на землі.
Man, they were rolling that thing out.
Oh, Red, bring up the gun.
Man, that thing just got kicked.
Our strength
We have no eyes on the enemy mortar.
Man, that guy, dude, don't even get me started on that guy, man. He's like, power, strength. You know, back when I was a kid, my uncle, it's like, bro, what the hell?
It's like, whoa, Jack, whoa. This is not the place. This was just a cologne review. I wasn't trying to get all that.
Dude, that man one day, man, he's gonna go so crazy. He's gonna be near some guy who looks like Lex Luthor in Times Square in New York. He's gonna be like, what's more important than a prime customer? What's more important than a prime customer? It's like, dude, I thank you for being a customer, like, or something like that.
Thank you for being a prime customer. I appreciate it, said Jeff.
Dude, he was not laughing that day, man. He wasn't like, well, I guess you could say that that's a prime person. Oh! He didn't do any of that, man. He was like, thank you for being a customer. We are appreciative of that. He was like, don't hurt me, man. Like, I only have one bodyguard here, and I don't think he can take you. You look crazy. But anyways, back to the clip.
Or cannon. But we need to drive them into dugouts to prevent our infantry being shelled.
AS-90 is built on a modified Challenger 1 tank chassis, which gives it robust armor and allegedly good off-road capabilities. However, 45 tons of metal are not as mobile on the Ukrainian gluey soil as it was initially planned. Moreover, the crew preferred to properly mask it and remain more or less stationary than driving for every task. The reason is simple.
It's almost impossible to work as a roving gun because of the large number of Lancets and drones. We don't want to get busted. That's why we work either completely in the dugout or a few meters from the caponier.
Bro, I'm not gonna lie, the narrator
when it
like
is stationed,
Yetloff from the control room of the Chernobyl reactor.
Man, he's about to be like, they're sick, take him to the infirmary. Man, a freaking SPG just get hit by a drone. You're delusional. You're sick. Take him to the infirmary.
He sounds just like him, man. It's like it sounds like the same actor, like on this voiceover.
Man, he honestly might be. You never know. We'll see.
In this
Maybe
kind
in
of
the
terrain
credits.
as we are now, it is almost impossible to notice it.
Although Great Britain has already made plans to retire AS-90, here in Ukraine such vehicles are more than welcome. From what the crew says, it is still far superior to most of the Soviet artillery.
Most. I'm telling you, man, I don't know what it is with claims like most of the Soviet artillery. Like, what Ukrainians are out there, man? Like, man, nothing beats the good old reliable peon, where you could just fire it out of the blue and there's a breech explosion and it kills the whole crew. Man, nothing beats it. It's like, okay, like, I'm not gonna lie, folks. There are a couple of critiques that I have. Like, the British by the book thing is 6, but we decided in our greater judgment, even though we didn't design or actually field this vehicle, that we only need 5 people. It's like, why? It's like, you know, it's like, why can't you just follow the book? Like, we're giving you all specific letter instructions, and it's like, we don't follow them. And then, like, while we do not follow the specific guidelines given to us by the UK, then we'll go, it's better than most Soviet artillery, but there are a couple that beat it. It's like, yeah, probably because you're following the manual on those, and maybe it seems good because there's enough people for the job. Like, the reason why there are sometimes more crew members than needed on tanks, like, for example, with this SPG, it technically kind of is a tank. It requires 6 people, according to the British doctrine, or at least British training. And the 6th guy is there so that way the SPG isn't overly cumbersome to the 5 guys or the 4 guys who could actually operate this thing efficiently. That's why they say 6, and then they go, oh, we only need 5. And it's like, but you really do need 6. And so that's something that is a little bit, you know, like, it kind of, like, irks me a little bit with that. It's like, if you followed the exact manual, if you cooked by the book, you wouldn't be complaining that much about it because it would be a manageable vehicle, you know. That's my opinion on that sort of a thing. Because that's, like, I'll be honest, that's kind of like where most complaints come from with Western tech. They'll be like, oh, the Abrams, it's okay. It's like, well, it's okay because you're using it wrong. It's like, if you're using it properly, it's great. If you're using it wrong, it's okay. It's like, you know, that's kind of my thing with that sometimes. It's like, you know, just because, I'm going to say this and hopefully it doesn't come off in a bad way. Just because they are the ones fighting a war right now doesn't mean that our training books here in the West weren't written by practical experience and our own experiences in war, or just the design phase of that vehicle that we literally used for decades. Like for the Abrams, it's like we used hundreds of Abrams, thousands of Abrams actually in the Gulf War. A lot of how we used them was specifically designed from that point forward based off of actual practical experience. And so when we say things like, don't let them go forward without infantry support, and then the Ukrainians sent one forward without infantry support near to the area outside of Avdiivka, and let me go find it, in the area around Berdichi, and then one of them gets detracked, and then there's no way to save it because it's not near infantry support. It's like, obviously they're going to start getting lost. Like, you know, like that's my thing. Like with that, it's like you gotta cook by the book, and if you do, things turn out okay. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, they don't really have the ingredients to cook by the book, but they do, at least in some instances. Like not charging an Abrams forward into enemy lines on its own, like that is just something you can easily not do. And then they do it, and then it gets blown up. They're like, oh, what the hell? It's like, this isn't the Soviet doctrine, and this isn't a tank following a Soviet doctrine. This isn't an armored wave. This is a highly specialized tank for a highly specialized role. You're supposed to use it with infantry support. That's the rule. Like, I don't know what's up with that sometimes, but whenever I hear stuff like, you know, like two statements like, we don't follow the book, and also it's okay, it's like, that's because you're probably not following the book. But moving on from that, we did get to see some Russians getting hit in the area today as well. And we're going to be muting that.
We have some fine new lawnmowers to sell here at Home Depot.
And also, I see some people saying they're doing what they can with what they have, and they have manpower shortages. Okay, then my argument is, why in the world is Ukraine demanding then, like as a counter argument, that all of the supplies we've pledged them needs to be flooding in if they don't even have enough manpower to use any of it? You know, that's my next argument. Obviously, they have the manpower because they're constantly asking for their forces to get more Western equipment, clearly showing that they have the manpower to spare to get more new Western equipment. But then when they get it, they can't cook by the book. And then they complain that it doesn't work the way it's intended to because they don't cook by the book. Like, that's my argument. Like, it's a good idea to think that they're that low on manpower, but the reality is that they really aren't. And that's kind of what they're fixing right now, is that it looks like they're going to start running low on manpower in the future. And so now they're trying to lower the conscription age and draft more Ukrainian men, so that way they never run into that problem in the future. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are now moving down into Kherson, where we actually got to see some Russian forces getting hit by the 73rd Naval Special Operations Center, which was a pretty interesting clip.
And as we can see right here, there's some fellows walking. Oh, man.
And man, they are just slamming these guys.
They're even taking the 2x4s out. They're making the roof jump around. I've never seen that before. Oh, a little fire.
Oh, toasty even.
And as we can see here, this is the scrap metal yard. Oh, and there's a... Oh no!
Oh!
Oh, and they got a disaster.
They got slammed by the artillery. Oh, and now the house is on fire. And now they're blowing out windows.
They're letting them have it. They're slamming every wall of the house. Oh, that is a bad house fire right there. That thing's coming down.
Man, and that's the end of the clip, but impressive work by the 73rd. And with that, it is now time for us to move north, and specifically on to YouTube really quickly, so that way you can try and find the speech from Zelensky, because I didn't see it on his actual website today, so let me go to their YouTube channel and see if I can find it this way. And so let me see here. There we go, Office of the President of Ukraine. There we go. And we actually have something. It's a video. It's not actually a speech. It's a video that was put out a little while ago. So let me get this up here, and let me see if I can get us the English subtitles here. Actually, let's expand that again. And let me
get the long-lasting subtitles, the ones that say, "Slava Ukraine." Can we hear some more? Thank you.
And we do. And so, without further ado, here is the speech.
Корея випробувала нову балістичну ракету. Це сталося напередодні. Рекордний час в польоті і достатня висота. А світ просто спостерігає. Спостерігає, як зростає ця загроза. Північна Корея навчилась робити краще артилерію. Це вже сталося завдяки співпраці з Москвою. Навчилась робити кращі ракети, і це вже очевидно. Зараз, на жаль, навчиться сучасній війні. Перші тисячі солдат з Північної Кореї неподалік українського кордону. Українці будуть змушені захищатись від них, а світ буде знов спостерігати. Ми неодноразово говорили, що не можна давати час таким загрозам. Не можна дозволяти Росії шукати і знаходити собі спільників. Не можна давати час будь-якому ворогу вільного світу зростати. Що об'єднує Пхеньян з Москвою? Тільки бажання воювати. Зараз ми бачимо кожен майданчик, на якому Росія на своїй території накопичує цих солдатів з Північної Кореї. Всі їхні табори. Ми могли би ударити превентивно, якби у нас була ця можливість. Бити достатньо далекобійно. І це залежить від партнерів. Але замість такої необхідної далекобійності Америка спостерігає. Британія спостерігає. Німеччина спостерігає. Всі просто чекають, поки ще й північно-корейські військові почнуть завдавати ударів по українцям. Ми знаємо всю логістику між Росією та Північною Кореєю, яка допомагає російській агресії. І ця логістика має бути заблокована. Це залежить в тому числі від сильних держав Азії. Це залежить від Китаю, який стільки говорить про припинення війни, а сам спостерігає. І поки звучать слова, на фронт їдуть військові з Північної Кореї. Кожен в світі, хто дійсно хоче, щоб ця війна Росії проти України не розширювалась, і щоб війна з Європи не перекинулась на інші регіони світу, кожен мусить не просто спостерігати. Треба діяти. Треба, щоб слова про неприпустимість ескалації і розширення війни співпадали з діями. Участь Північної Кореї у цій війні в Європі – це загроза всьому світу. Загроза, яку треба зупинити.
And with that, that is the end of the
Героям
speech.
слава.
And Rom Slava. And that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 982 of the war. And that is going to be moving us on into the second segment of this stream where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And what a night it has been already. At the peak so far, there's been about 11.7 thousand people here watching tonight, and about 85,000 people have watched so far. I hope that many of y'all continue to watch the stream. We have a good bit to go and a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. But I do want to thank all of y'all so far for watching our news segment. I have to let y'all know that beyond this point, no news of any substance will be covered. We're going to be talking to everyone in the live chat as much as we possibly can for the remainder of the stream, and also we're going to be trying to make it a little bit shorter tonight because we both have to get up extremely early in the morning tomorrow to take care of some stuff behind the scenes. So with that, Matthew, take it away.
All right, so real quick, folks, I'm having to take a quick second here to secure my account because someone is trying to hack into one of my main accounts. So give me just a second here, Enforcer, to quickly change a password or two, and I'll be right back with you.
Oh my holy moly. But beyond that, if y'all want to know something interesting, let's see here. Something interesting to talk about. Well, did y'all know that there's a massive train station inside of Würzburg? It was pretty cool, actually. I could show it to y'all really quickly if y'all like to see it. It's this one right here. It's the Würzburg Hauptbahnhof. And it's a very cool one because this is actually the first high-speed German rail route in the entirety of the Federal Republic of Germany. You can actually see one of the, I believe that's a DB406 model right there at the station. You can also see the main, one of the main buildings within Würzburg. It's a very beautiful city. Generally, it exists off of its original architecture, although some of the buildings were destroyed and rebuilt after World War II. It still is a very impressive and beautiful train station to be seen.
I'm back.
Sure. And he's back, baby! But before we move on, this actually is a pretty cool thing, Matthew. Like, did you know that this was the first high-speed rail route in all of Germany, and it opened in the early 90s?
I did not know that, but I mean, it looks It looks very German.
Yes, yes, it does. Let me see if I can show you some cool stuff on this route because it cost a lot of money to build it. It was like 20 million euros per kilometer, which comes out to about 23 million US dollars per 0.78 miles or so. It's a very expensive kind of a route that they made. And let me actually, you know what? Let me make sure to double check this one because if I remember correctly, see Würzburg, and then it shoots off. Yeah, it does shoot off west. It goes through here, and then it goes north. Yeah, this is all right. So it keeps going north, and I think this is the point where it starts to get onto its higher speed leg. There are some really cool points, though, in between, because they built a huge amount of bridges and viaducts for this high-speed network that are just amazing to see. Let me see if I can find them, though. Let's see here. So it's Würzburg to Kassel. That was like one of the first high-speed routes. Stops in Fulda. And I think it passes through this area, which was the Fulda Gap, which is a very interesting thing in itself in the Cold War. But let me look at the station here. So there's the station. It shoots off. Where in the hell? Like, I just keep... Wait a minute. There we go. Yeah, this is the ice high-speed route. This is the one that we're actually looking for right here. So let me see if I can follow this one. It's going to be hard because some of the tunnels are huge. But
I mean, is this a train? Is this that train that could go from like Berlin to Warsaw in like one tank? It was very fuel efficient.
that is not that one, man. That is not that one. But let me see if I can go and pull up the ice high speed bridges because when you see them, Matthew, you'll be like, wow, those things are actually pretty impressive because they are huge. They had to make these massive bridges as a part of the German high speed rail network, and so let me see if I can get a really cool picture of one of them. Yeah, here we go. So these are some of the bridges that you would find in between areas like Kassel and Würzburg. They are hundreds of feet above the valleys below, and they are just impressive to see. Like, let me see if I can get a better picture. This is a pretty good picture of one of them. But they are just cool. And the speeds that can be maintained on these bridges is in excess of like 150 miles an hour. So they are in like marvels of engineering for the large part. Pretty cool stuff. But Matthew, now that we've gotten through that at least just a little bit on the Schnellfahrtstrecke, let's see, Würzburg to Kassel kind of an area, or the division if you want to call it. How's that account securing going? Did you secure it?
So, you know, what people don't realize is I do have a little bit of a background in IT, just a little bit. Just I know a little thing or two here and there. I do have 2FA turned on every single account I have, and also notifications of logins. So when I see someone logging in, and it's from a very, very suspicious area, and also I see someone trying to get a code to change my password, I can change it pretty quick and lock them out and make sure they can't get in. So that's what I did. They tried to get into a very unassuming account to try to steal my passwords and stuff like that. So they've been locked out, so I'm glad to say we averted that disaster. But nonetheless, the account is safe. So we're now moving on to our poll question, which is currently running right now. It says that U.S. Intel says that Ukraine has enough soldiers for 6 to 12 months. And what is the best way for Ukraine to fix this issue? So 41% said lower the Ukrainian conscription age, while 22% said take a more conservative strategy, and 18% said go all in and do the do or die strategy. And on this one right here, I will say this is an issue that Ukraine is going to have to address. We've been hearing from U.S. Intel for quite some time, and also from Ukraine themselves, that they are having a manpower issue. And now that Russia has found a new source, meaning North Korea, that means that Ukraine's going to have to really fix this issue really fast. So the most obvious answer here to this question is to lower the Ukrainian conscription age. That would be the first logical step here, instead of changing their overall strategy. I would say the worst option on the list here is to go all in and do the do or die strategy. That is not the way to do this. That sounds like maybe it's like the Hail Mary approach. I would not do that at all. That seems like a recipe for disaster, and I certainly wouldn't do that one. So I'm with the 41%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that in my opinion, there is a fourth option, Matthew, that was not on that poll. I saw someone bring it up, and I was thinking it right when they brought it up too in the chat. There are a lot of Ukrainian men that are of conscription age under the current parameters, and I'm meaning a lot of them. There's hundreds of thousands, if not even more than a couple of million of them, that are hanging out in Europe or outside of Europe, even here in the United States and Canada. And those guys could be sent back because they technically are dodging military service, and they could fight in the war. That's another option. It's one that not a lot of people have explored at the moment, but it certainly is one that I would say needs to be put into consideration, that maybe Ukraine requests that all of these European nations start to find and send back the Ukrainian conscription-age men that avoided military service by escaping the country in pretty much its opening days of war, or even afterwards by bribing border guards. There's a lot of them. Some of them actually I've been getting a little bit of ire recently, especially in places like Poland, because they seem to be making it very clear, and there's some of these people are a little prideful on getting to avoid Ukrainian military service when they know otherwise they would have served. And I think that at this point, it probably would be a pretty good move to start sending a lot of these guys back because they weren't supposed to have left the country in the first place when martial law was declared. So I would say that maybe it would be a good fourth option, or to lower the conscription age. That is also something that can be done as well, considering that it's not even down to 18 at this point, it's only at 25. There is a decent amount that they can continue to bump it down until they get to the U.S. conscription age standard, which is 18 years old. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion, on what I would believe. And there are a lot of Ukrainian men that did that. Some people would be kind of shocked to know some of the people who did that. But as long as you had money, like at a minimum $10,000 to give to a Ukrainian border guard for a good while, you could pretty much just cross the border, no questions asked, no receipt in exchange for the monetary favor, and you were able to get out of Ukraine and really go anywhere you wanted to at that point. So
it's really crazy to think that more people really don't think about it. Like, some people out there that y'all may know, after they announced martial law and said the men can't leave the country, and all of a sudden, a particular men still left the country. It's like, how does anybody think they really left the country? Because they didn't let anybody leave after they made that announcement. So how did people end up still getting out? And I don't think enough people really ask that question sometimes, because I see some out there that really aren't being questioned on that.
yeah, and I have to kind of bring this up. It's a very good point. Throughout the entire first year of the war, no male citizen of Ukraine was allowed to leave the country under any circumstances. Zelensky didn't even leave the country. The foreign senior diplomats did not leave the country. No one was supposed to leave the country. That was the standing order. That was the order under martial law. Anyone who left during that time largely should be suspect. And I've heard some things being said that, oh, so-and-so, he was too old. But it's like, that doesn't make a lot of sense, because if you look at the Ukrainian front lines, there are a lot of guys out there who are in their 50s right now, even in their early 60s, that are serving in frontline units. Like, to say that someone was just simply too old because they're in their 40s, when there are people decades older than them that are on the front lines, it's like, that doesn't really make a lot of sense or add up a lot. And another thing that doesn't really make much sense is being told that during that entire year that was going on, someone gets a special exemption and is able to leave. It's like, that's a little weird. That's a little weird to say, because no one was getting special exemptions. I mean, hell, even people like Klishchiivka, like the mayor of Kyiv, someone who is world famous for their boxing renown, couldn't even leave Ukraine. Why in the hell would just some random guy get the approval from the central Ukrainian government to just walk out for no reason? Like, the manpower was needed as much then as it is now. They were trying to mobilize back then, much less keep up a fighting force. All manpower was needed. So I always found that a little weird, and I've always thought that it's been a little odd how sometimes you try and bring that up a little bit, and people will go, "Hey, wait a minute, don't bring that up on this person, because obviously they left under more than legal standards." And it's like, but how could they have when no one else was allowed to leave? Like, even people who everyone knows, like Klitschko, they weren't allowed to leave, but just this random guy or two, they got the approval. It's like, that seems highly unlikely to be. So with that, I hope
I don't know
that
if Ukraine's ever going to criminally prosecute those people for doing that, because obviously that was criminal to leave. But what's even worse, though, is the border guards that actually let those people pull that corrupt scheme off. Is they say, okay, if you give me some money, I'll let you through the border with no problem. Those are the guys that really need to be prosecuted first. But at the same time, the ones engaging in it and running off away from their homeland like that, surely Ukraine plans on getting them back one day.
maybe I would think that they would, but for some of them, it may be hard to track them down. Like, just to be entirely honest, Now, this was something of a weird coincidence that I had. Matthew, did I tell you about this? I actually do have an Instagram. It's private though. It's kind of just like for people I personally know from real life, like in years back. But I was on my Instagram one day, and crazily enough, I got recommended an account for someone that we know who is from Ukraine. And I was like, that's really interesting. I was like, I wonder what's on that account. And what's interesting about it is that it only had, I think, like 150 to 200 followers, so a lot of people didn't know about it. But what I found on it was shocking, like to say the least. There was the account wasn't private, so you could literally see anything that was posted on it. And this particular person is traveling the world. Like, they got out of Ukraine and they're going on world tour. Like, there were pictures of them in the Amazon rainforest in Brazil, literally just like a few months ago. There were pictures of them in Las Vegas, pictures of them in Poland, in London, in Paris. I mean, this particular person, and I'm not going to mention their name, but, you know, I want you to kind of get an idea here. This person is going on a world tour, and I'm like, that's a little interesting, considering that the simple explanation that was given was that they just left because they were allowed to leave and they couldn't serve. But then when you look, well, at least when I had that like very weird fortune of seeing that Instagram, they're going on a freaking world tour. Like, I don't even know how in the world they're doing that, because, you know, with
Well, that's not surprising, because I mean, even the Poles are getting angry, because I saw a story yesterday that some Polish citizens are seeing some of the Ukrainian guys that escaped from Ukraine and ran off. They're in Poland and they're buying like luxury cars and Mercedes, and they're driving around in nicer cars than the Polish people are buying. And they're like, hey, wait a minute, like, what's this guy doing who ran off from Ukraine and ran away from their country doing over here in our country, taking the benefits and also buying these expensive luxury cars? Like, it's starting to really make the Polish angry as well. And surely Ukraine like needs to get these people back. Obviously, they need the manpower, and also they need to hold those people accountable, in my opinion. Like, you know, those are Ukrainian citizens. Either revoke the citizenship or get them back.
Yeah, that's true. I would agree with that. And also, I saw Melanie say it would be difficult to determine who left before or after the war. Actually, it wouldn't be that difficult, especially with one of the people I'm talking about right now, because they have a profile that's about as bright as a Christmas tree at this moment. Like, it's not hard to see, like, that they left during the war. It was literally a public thing. It was like a very publicized thing. They left in the middle of the war. And that is something that I just find incredibly bizarre, especially with kind of like our personal experience with this particular scenario. It's very interesting to see how kind of self-serving the interests were, even on our end. Like, on the superficial level we got to see them, there was no real interest in Ukraine there, like in like an actual personable level. It was just interest in self-benefit or what they wanted to do the most. And then to see that I found their Instagram literally just out of the blue, like, I'm not even kidding, it was like crazy. It happened maybe 10 days ago, I think, and I was on Instagram just looking at memes, and they popped up, and I was like, there's no way that that's this person's Instagram. And I clicked on it, and lo and behold, it really was. And like, the stuff I saw, I'll have to show it to you, Matthew, because I think I still have it in like the recent like search thing where you can click on it again. It was wild, man. You wouldn't believe the pictures that were there. Like, extremely luxurious casinos in Las Vegas, nice places in London, like looking at bespoke suits, and in Paris on like some of the nicest avenues that there is. Like, I was absolutely floored. I was like, that's crazy, especially considering that one of this particular person had moved originally to Switzerland, which is one of the most expensive countries in the world to live in. And, you know, there's a certain kind of a presentation being given, but from what I can tell, it may be an entirely different thing in the background, which, you know, like, it's like, you know, to each his own, but I still don't like how there's a dissonance in between what's being presented publicly and what's going on in the background. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion, with what could be done to deal with the manpower situation. But you could start sending folks like that back that the Ukrainians actually want. Like, it's not like, you know, any other kind of a situation where these people are refugees or something. Like, they're not. They're men who fled the country that weren't supposed to. They can be sent back, and the Ukrainian government certainly would probably want to put them into military service because it's their national duty to do so. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our super chat segment here, the last one of the stream, the long-lasting segment. Our first one here goes to Samuel Wenskog, who puts in a very generous $95 donation, and huge shout out to you, Samuel, for putting in that very generous support. And he said, "Oh man, the Swede is back again. Anyways, you boys can have a little treat." And thank you very much, Samuel. It's good to have the Swede back again, and it's good to see you.
And man, I thank you so much for the support in helping this channel to keep on running. Man, I also thank you for being from Sweden. Man, I don't know where you are from in Sweden, but we're still greatly thankful. Man. But beyond the voice, because that is honestly annoying to me tonight for some reason, I do have to say, Sweden is a beautiful country. We want to go there one day. We don't know when we could, but I would love to see the place. It has just beautiful cities all over. I especially want to see Stockholm because everyone always says Stockholm is one of the prettiest cities in Scandinavia. So I do want to see that without a doubt. But what's crazy, man, honestly, is that Stockholm isn't really that big, at least the downtown area. It's actually fairly small. It's just the more modern areas that kind of start to see a bit of the sprawl. But I guess that's kind of the case with every single city because, like, when you look at Washington, D.C., which is a really good example, you can see like the areas that were originally built out and then the urban sprawl that happened later literally everywhere else.
They got to watch out going to Stockholm, though, because you can catch that Stockholm syndrome. You can be down with the sickness, down with the syndrome, but not really. Like, you're not going to catch that. You might get maybe a little bit of that, what was it, the Havana treatment or the Havana
syndrome.
lashing, or the Havana syndrome.
The lashing, what the hell?
It was something like that. It was an electronic warfare lashing of some sorts. The Russians have a portable microwave running around, but you know that's just hype talk. Who said that was real?
Did he? Is that you? Man, ain't nothing like a Stockholm lashing. But anyways,
with a side of baby oil.
Oh no, man, dude! Remember that meme I showed you the other day? It was like, man, you think I was going to get you for dropping the soap? Come on, man, pick it up. And then he went to pick it up. He said, "A lot." It's like that's Diddy right there. It's like, oh man, get him away. But still, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. At least to throw in a good joke or two. And I thank you so much once again for the support, Samuel Wenskog, and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for having us. Thank you for letting us have a little treat. That's actually a long-lasting treat. And I thank you so much once again because it was not for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a big thanks once again. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to none other than Dupper Bob, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Dupper, for that support as always. And he said, Slava Ukraine.
And Slava Ukraine. And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't have been able to keep it running for this long. And I got to thank you. I got to thank you massively, Dupper Bob, for enjoying this channel so much and supporting it and helping it to keep on running. Because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to be here for all this time, and we wouldn't have been able to be here for a long time beyond now. And so huge thanks to you once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to none other than Purple Gerbil, who's a channel legend, and puts in a $20 donation. And a huge shout out to the Purple Gerbil for that support. I just wondered, why they call themselves the Purple Gerbil? Like, I just wondered that, Purple Gerbil, because you've been here for a long time. I've never put thought into it, though. Why is the gerbil purple? Has he lost the ability to take a breath, a long-lasting breath, and maybe he's starting to get a little blue in the face or a little purple? He's past the blue phase. He's moved on to purple. If he were blue, he'd believe he could die. But anyways, moving on here to the to the super chat. Purple Gerbil said, "Do you think Russia has a hand in Iran's nuclear threat?" And I'll say forever.
I don't really think so, because the Iranian nuclear program has been moving forward really without Russian involvement for about a decade at this point. So I generally doubt it. It's kind of like how North Korea's nuclear weapons program was actually a surprise to the entire world when they tested their first nuclear weapon. I think the Iranians are largely in the same vein at this point. And so I hope that does address that fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for support and asking such an interesting question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, I would like to know why it's Purple Gerbil, by the way, like seriously. But anyways, moving on here to our next one. This one goes to Andy L., who sadly already left for the night. He had to leave a little bit early. But thank you very much, Andy, for the $20 support, and also for being, of course, a channel legend. And he says, is there going to be a separate North Korean line item?
A separate North Korean line item?
For the losses.
Oh, no, I don't think so. I think they're all going to be amalgamated into a single loss category. I thought, like, line item, I thought that was, like, clearance at the discount store. I was like, I don't know. Like, I was like, maybe, like...
100% off today only.
Dude, North Korean, 20% off the top. They're 5'4". They're a little small. But beyond that, I thank you so much once again for support. I hope that also addresses that fairly well, ADL, and thank you for being a legend of the channel and supporting us and helping us to keep this thing running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one here goes to Balrogs, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Balrogs, for that $20 support. They said, great work as always, and take one from the LSA.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for enjoying it and saying that it's a great stream, because we put a lot of effort into this thing, and we're always happy to hear that people are really enjoying it a great deal. And we will make sure to get a live chat in your honor. But thank you so much once again. And what do we got, Matthew?
And this live chat question goes to Jeffrey Cohn, who says, how would the U.S. respond to an actual nuclear attack by Iran on Israel?
We probably will respond with massive retaliatory attacks against Iran and probably attempt to completely remove their government. We don't really know, though, because we may also be really scared and concerned that they may start to nuke others if we start to react heavily, and so we may actually back off a lot, or we may go all in and completely decapitate their government and pretty much overthrow the Islamic Republic overnight. Either way, I have an honest feeling that it would probably go towards the former, which is overthrowing the Iranian government, than the latter of kind of backing off and doing nothing. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And also, before we move on into the next one, I do have to say, folks, no politics, all right? I know people are getting a little antsy. People are wanting to vote because it's only like 4 days away. Have patience. It's coming around. Don't pollute our channel with that crap, please. Thank you. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, Purple Gerbil answered the question. They said, I just wanted something different for a name. I used a conventional name and got spam very bad. Well, I understand why you wouldn't use your real one. I understand that completely, so I feel you on that one. But Purple Gerbil, I just realized you literally have a... That might be a gerbil. I was about to say that is a gerbil, but I don't really know what that is in the profile picture there. That might be a purple gerbil. Is that a gerbil? Like, this is leading me to more questions here. It's yielding 2 knives. Very interesting. Also, it's got its tongue out, too. That's a crazy gerbil. But anyways, moving on from that. Also, thank you for letting me know what the username means. I was very curious. But moving on here to our next super chat. This one goes to John Garner, who's a channel legend, of course, and puts in a 20. And thank you, John. He says, hi, LSA, and let's rock the chat.
And hello there, and let us rock the chat. Let us, like the vegetable. And I gotta thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible, John Garner. And so a big thanks once again. And with that, long live the Lee Spring Army, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to none other than Scott, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Scott, for the 20. And he says, Poland has announced the construction of Eastern Shield defensive lines along their border with Russia and Belarus. And do you think they will extend this line through the Suwalki Gap and the Kaliningrad border?
I would hope that they would, because that was one of the weakest areas, to be entirely honest, that they really do need to fortify and defend. Knowing how history goes, that'll probably be the area that's overlooked, because like with the Maginot Line, because the Belgians kind of backed out, they didn't extend the Maginot Line to include the Belgian border, because it will make it look like they weren't exactly neutral. So we don't really know. I would hope that they would, but historically there's usually a precedent that those kinds of defensive lines have a major Achilles heel. So maybe, or maybe not. I'm leaning more towards hopefully they would be smart enough to actually close that massive gap, so that way the entire defensive line just completely failed from day one. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one here goes to Alpha Kenny Body, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much for that support. And they said you're about to strike a chord, and it's probably a minor. Oh no. Well then. Oh dear. Let's see. It said this is my diss track to Scott Ritter, JT. Well, very interesting diss track you have there. I think that was plagiarized from someone. If I'm not a rap expert, but I think that was plagiarized to Alpha Kenny Buddy. But also that other individual. Oh my, he gets no respect around here. He gets no respect around here. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, okay. You had us in the first half, not gonna lie. I was actually very concerned there because Matthew just stopped right there, and I was like, what? I was like, what the hell is that supposed to mean? And then it had an interesting finish right there. But nevertheless, I will say, thank you for the support. And also, Scott Ritter, not exactly a great individual, to just put that lightly. Many people always come through this channel and there's like that guy and someone else. Who the hell's the other guy, Matthew? He's some guy who's like a Russian sellout, really, for the most part. He just says whatever the Russians really want him to say. I forgot who he is.
Let's see. There's actually a few guys, at least in my opinion. Scott Ritter was one of them. I think Douglas McGregor might be the other one. And there was also one more too. I can't remember his name though, but y'all know who we're talking about. Like they're really like notorious. Oh, it was damn, what was his name? Fuentes or something like that. There was Fuentes, and there was also that other one. What is his name? Like, let me know, folks. What are the rage baiters for the Russian side? Because I know the guy, I see his face, but I can't place a name.
I don't know,
Oh my
but
God,
his face reminds me of whole milk 2% fat. Like, I don't know what it is with that. Like, it's like the most bland looking face I've ever seen. And I remember looking at his Wikipedia, and he was from West Point. And I was like, aha. I was like, see, like,
Hinkle. It's Jackson Hinkle. That's the other guy.
I don't think it's Jackson Hinkle. It's someone else. No one's getting the name right. Like Douglas McGregor, Doug McGregor, that guy, Matthew.
Yeah, I said that one. I mean, I already said that one. That was
you did?
Name.
Let's see here. Let me go pull him up then, because I need to show you this guy. Yeah, the guy who looks like milk, 2% fat. It's this guy right here.
Milk.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this guy right here. I must say, like at the beginning, I wasn't very sure about him, but the more I heard him talk, I'm like, okay, this guy is full of crap. Like he really is. Like I get the fact. I think he was in the military. Like if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember what branch he was in.
The Army.
But he's just the Army. He's just spewing crap. Like I don't even know what's gotten into him to spew that crap. Nothing he says makes much sense, and he's like. I don't know if it's to say anti-American or what he is, but he's not exactly like pro-Western interest, at least from what I've heard.
Let's see here. He was in the Battle of 73 Easting and the 1st Squadron, 4th Cavalry, as a colonel in the U.S. Army. So let's see. He's got a lot of awards. That's interesting, and he's from West Point. So just putting that out there.
And also, I've heard he likes to go after people too. So I wouldn't be shocked to hear he's like, oh, there's those stupid kids over there or something like that. Well, don't worry. Like we don't think very highly of you either. I'm sure he'll probably say something here shortly, but you know, I haven't heard many good takes out of him.
Look, man, he's got some of the dumbest takes of the damn century. Like I'll say this. I'll just put this out there, and I've always said this, and I always will, that. Just because you go to an illustrious place like Harvard or West Point, or if you go to a community college, that does not determine at all the intelligence of an individual. I would have to say that this guy has some of the worst opinions and takes on just about anything. And so let's go down here to, let's see here. Let me see. NATO. McGregor said old alliances like NATO may vanish, arguing that it is time to re-examine U.S. investment in allies that are doing too little to secure their own sovereign interests, which is a pretty dumb take, because like, didn't we create NATO? Like America almost single-handedly made NATO just so that we could protect our interests in Europe against the Soviets. It's like, if I remember correctly, that's kind of why we did that. And with the Russians re-emerging as a threat, it's like, that's a pretty dumb take. But let's see here. And then also, this is the thing. This is the thing I don't get. Like, in one metric, like, he'll go, oh, well, whatever. Allies don't really matter, right? Like, we can just, like, leave them to fend for themselves in Europe. But then with Israel, we have a holy right to defend the Israelis. It's like, what's the difference? It's like, they're just an ally like any other. We could say that they're not as important as they used to be, because now we have the Saudis. It's like, why in the world do we have to actually, like, die hard just, you know, protect them to the T? That's like, that makes no sense.
It's solely political. It's solely political. That's his whole thing. It's just all about politics, from what I can tell. And also, like, I see people calling him a sellout. I guess that's one word for it, I guess you could say. But like, his takes are just like really horrific. Like, I've only heard a couple of like audio from him, and it's usually like kind of like a pro-Russian like take on things from what I've heard, and it's just really absurd.
Let's see. 3 days after the war began, he said the battle in eastern Ukraine is really almost over, and predicted if Ukraine don't surrender in the next 24 hours, I suspect Russia will annihilate them. That aged like milk, 2% fat. He also believed that Russia would be allowed to seize whatever parts of Ukraine it wanted, which also has never materialized. In the second appearance he had on Fox News, he revised the prediction. The first 5 days, Russian forces, I think, frankly, were too gentle. They've now corrected that. So I would say another 10 days, this should be completely over. I think the most heroic thing he could do right now is come to terms with reality, neutralize Ukraine. That didn't really happen, did it either? That one aged kind of like Diddy's bottles of baby oil, and not really a good look. Let's see. Out of one of his appearances, the comments were characterized as distorting and appeasement and an apologist. That doesn't actually sound that bad off the mark. Let's see. Remarked. Let's see. Hang on. Oh no, Tucky G, Matthew, he said he's an honest man. How honest were these statements? I mean, like, this analysis was the worst you could get. Like, anyone with a brain after they saw the fourth day, like when the Ukrainians actually stopped the Russian offensive and their momentum dead in its tracks outside of Kyiv, anyone could have told you that this war was going to be lasting a lot longer than just the next few weeks, even at that. Like, it was going to at least last for months or maybe a year at that point. We said that on this channel, and I didn't have to go to West Point, and I didn't have to be in the army to say that either and get that dead on the nail. Like, anyone could have seen that at that point. But let's see here. And then
also, I see here that it says right there that he said, at least according to the Wikipedia article, because I haven't heard it myself, but according to Wikipedia, it says that he included a characterization of Ukrainian President Zelensky as a puppet, and the Russian force has been too gentle. Also, it said Vladimir Putin was demonized by the United States and NATO. Oh my God! Like, that tells you everything you need to know right there, if that's accurate.
Oh man, let's see here. There's no question. Wait, hang on. In his fourth appearance, he said the ceasefire was close, as Ukrainian forces have been grounded to bits. There's no question about that, despite what we report on our mainstream media. When was that fourth appearance? Because apparently it was before July of 2022. So this was literally still in the first few months of the war. And he got it all wrong. Like, all of these statements are just wrong. We're here 3 years later. Like, we're on the 982nd day of the war. All of them were wrong. Like, this is just bad take after bad take. And like, also the other thing is that I love how someone like this, let's see here. He was in the Battle of 73 Easting in the U.S. Army, educated at West Point, and because of these reasons alone, he can spew out bullshit like the Ukrainians are done for and not have to explain or defend the position at all. Like, no one goes, well, why? And then he actually explains it. They're literally all just standalone statements, like with no analysis at all as to why they are doing so badly or why, in his opinion, he thinks they're going to collapse. And that's why I really cannot stand this. This is another thing I can't stand. People like him, who were members of the military, will flaunt that for the rest of their lives. I was in the military and I served, therefore I know. And it's like, do you though? Because it's like he's gotten everything wrong so far. It's like, like I respect, formerly serving in the armed forces, like anyone should. But it's like that doesn't give a blank check to make whatever statements you want to make about anything militarily related and then say that it is gospel because I served. It's like that doesn't make any sense because this guy has no basis in reality for any of the statements that he made at all. All of them were wrong. But let's see. It's just crazy. Like, it's absolutely crazy to read this kind of stuff. It's like, where in the world did he even get this crap from? But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one's going to go to Danny B, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Danny, for the $50 support, and we appreciate it very much. And he says, good evening, Forcers, and hello from the Basketball Social House. And we are rocking y'all on the Bluetooth speaker in the kitchen. Hey! Shout out to the kitchen, by the way, at the Basketball Social House. He said, LSA, and take one from the chat.
And a big shout out to y'all folks down in southern Denver right now. And a big thanks to you for putting us on the Bluetooth speaker in the kitchen. I got to say, that's actually really cool. And I got to thank you so much for the support, enjoying this channel, and broadcasting this thing to the entire kitchen staff there at the Basketball Social, because it's amazingly cool to know that people enjoy this channel that much. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you. A huge thanks to you once again.
All right, and the one sponsored by Danny B from the live chat is going to go to, let's see here, going to go to David Long, who said, do you think the U.S. will respond after the elections are done?
Respond to who? The Russians?
I think he meant to say, do you think Iran will respond after the elections are done?
I'm not really sure. It actually kind of looks like they may. Matthew and me were talking about that a little bit before stream. Really, to be honest, I don't think the election has any sway on them whatsoever in planning this strike. So if it happens before or after, it didn't really matter. Like, the election didn't really matter in that decision to be made. But it probably will happen after. The Iranians never work fast with these strikes. It's always very slow. To be entirely honest, it'll probably happen like 3 weeks from now, most likely, like if we're going off of everything that's always happened in the past. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat well, and a big shout out to you once again for the support, Danny B, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat here is going to go to none other than Alpha Kenny something once again. They've said that something is up with the name. I don't see it, but I'm scared now, so I'm not going to say the whole name. But thank you very much for the $20 support once again. They said, say the name to yourself 3 times. I don't want you to actually get in trouble on YouTube. I love Jenna, last name Doles. I have no idea what the username says. Like, if it's something, I've totally missed it because I didn't even hear it. But thank you very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much for the support. I'm not getting it either, but maybe one day we will. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Anonymouse, who puts in a $12 donation. And thank you very much, Anonymouse, for the support. Hey. They said, check out a video about a Kyiv Independent called The Witches of Ukraine. And they are a bunch of women who came together to shoot down some Russian drones.
We actually have shown that before on the channel, I think about a month ago or so, but it was a pretty cool clip. My only thing that I was scared about with showing that clip, though, is that some people in the chat were going to go, ooh la la, and go crazy or something, but luckily it actually went pretty well. But still, I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Michelle Van Drangel, who puts in an $11 super chat. And thank you very much. If it's Michael, I'm sorry. Or I said Michelle, because I'm not sure if that's the way it's supposed to be said. But I have a feeling I'm really messing that up. But thank you very much for the support. He said, will Willy Wonka send a nuke to Ukraine if he loses all of his Oompa Loompas?
Who's Willy Wonka?
Are you serious?
No, I know who Willy Wonka is, but who's Willy Wonka in real life in that analogy? Like, who? Is it Putin? Is it Kim Jong-un? Like, I don't know who that would be.
Willy?
Willy?
Is that you, Willy?
Is that Johnny Depp?
Yes, you say, hello, Willy Wonka.
No,
I don't know who it is, to be honest with you. Like, I'm just stalling.
Huh?
I don't know who it is, to be honest with you. I'm just stalling. Like, I'm trying to figure out, like, Willy Wonka send a nuke to Ukraine if you lose all the Oompa Loompas. Who's the Oompa Loompas?
Dude, Putin just looks at Kim Jong-un and just says, no son of mine is ever going to grow up to be a chocolatier. And then just like hits the nuke button, starts nuking Ukraine. I don't know who that is supposed to be. But if they lose, if the Russians lose, maybe. If the North Koreans lose, I don't really think they have enough skin in the game to really throw a nuke at Ukraine, so I would doubt it. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Clayton Wilkie, who puts in a 10. Thank you very much, Clayton, for the support. He said, is it true that Britain are sending troops to fight in Ukraine? And thank you both enforcers with these updates on what's happening to this crazy world we live in today. LSA from Brisbane, Queensland, Australia.
Hey, and a big shout out to Brisbane in Queensland, Australia. Right up here, actually. And I gotta say, that is a very good question right there. An incredibly good question. A long-lasting question. And I would have to tell you that in my honest opinion, I think, and I'm trying to make sure that I can find this one. And here we go, Clayton. Is it true Britain's sending troops to fight in Ukraine? No, it's not true. They are not sending troops at the moment. They are training Ukrainians in Britain, but I haven't heard of them sending any of their soldiers into Ukraine anytime soon, unless if they're in very low numbers and advisory roles, far behind the lines. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to John Bartley, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, John, as well, for that very generous support. And he said, some comic relief here. I found that if men... hold on, let me see here. let me proofread this. Let's see.
Some comic relief.
Oh, okay. It's good. It's good. It's not that bad, actually. He said, I found that if men donate small amounts numerous times, your wife won't get mad compared to if you donate 100 once or twice. Love the chat and the 2 enforcers.
And I thank you for the support, John Bartley. And I was actually very scared that that was going to be something very risque that might get us in trouble with YouTube. But alas, it's actually true. From what we can tell, that's what most people end up doing, to be entirely honest. But I do thank you so much for the support, John Bartley, and helping this channel to keep on running and finding a way to find a wife hack for the large part so that way they don't get angry at you and start beating you with a broom or something like that. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Irvman, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Irvman, for the support. He said, what's not to say they don't already have a nuclear bomb in Iran, and they don't have a regime to monitor them anymore?
Maybe so. Maybe. I think that's how it should be, to be entirely honest, but I don't think that's how it is at the moment. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Bill G, who says, I have a question. And also, Bill put in a 10, by the way. Thank you very much, Bill. He said, my question is, if Iran were hypothetically to use a nuke, what, if any retaliation, would they actually face?
If they were to face any retaliation, it could be a counter-nuking by Israel. Israel is nuclear armed from what we understand. Or it could be a large U.S. military response to completely cripple their armed forces on any offensive level and then decapitate their government and overthrow the Islamic Republic. That could be a possible, well, a couple of possible likely outcomes of the Iranians nuking Israel. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that quite well, Bill G. Great question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, huge shout out to Santi BJ Samche, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Santi, for the $10 support. And I don't see a comment to address, but we appreciate that support very much. And we also have a $10 super chat from Snotty, who said, you guys rock. And thank you.
And thank you to the both of you. And thank you for saying that we rock and helping this channel to keep on running, Snotty, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. And so thank you to both of y'all once again for the support and helping this channel to keep rolling. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one here goes to Burbo, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Burbo, for that $10 support. And he said, nobody expects the Mexican LSA and got myself a shirt. Though I have to make a few things as a no shipping to Mexico. And would it be good enough to call Russians orcs and North Koreans norks?
Actually, that would work. Like, I think that's actually a pretty good one. So we might start calling them Norks, although we honestly just call countries by their full official name on this channel. Like, we call them their full legal names here. We aren't saying Taiwan. We say Republic of China. We don't call North Korea North Korea. We call it the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. But yeah, if you want to call them Norks, I think that's actually a pretty good nickname for them, since they're kind of just like Russians, but from North Korea. And also, nice to hear that you got a shirt. Also, I hate to hear that we do not ship to Mexico. I just realized that we didn't. But still, I hope that you do enjoy the shirt, and I thank you for going through the effort of finding a way to get one into Mexico, because that is pretty cool. And everyone expects the Mexican LSA, because there are members of the LSA from literally every corner of the globe. And so with that, thank you.
And also, I'd have you know, Burbo, that if I had it my way, we would ship to Mexico. But the catch is, we use a partner to fulfill the shirts. And apparently, they don't like shipping to Mexico for some reason. I'm not sure why. It's probably a money reason behind it instead of an actual, like, other reason. Like, obviously, they would want to ship to Mexico if they could. But I'm not sure why they do, but I wish we could change that. Maybe in the future, I can find a way to be able to ship those to Mexico, because that would be pretty cool. Because, to be honest with you, I have no idea why we don't, because that seems like a place that we'd want to ship to. But sorry that didn't work out.
And with that, I hope that does address that well as to why we can't ship to Mexico. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Leora Abigail, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Leora, for the $10 support. And they said, good evening, enforcers. And do you think the Russians may have helped Iran with developing a nuke like they helped 5-Star Snow coffee makers in North Korea with launching the ICBM?
I don't think so, because generally the Russians probably are not involved, because from what we've seen, it has been crawling at a snail's pace for about the past 10 years in Iran, from what we've seen publicly. So I wouldn't think they're that involved, because we would usually see some sort of a market increase in speed, and we really don't see that at the moment. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does address your first $10 super chat well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have 2 more $10 super chats from Leora Abigail. And the second one here says, can you go into detail about how you think the U.S. is going to address the situation of Iran's threat of nuclear war on the Middle Eastern and U.S. response with the B-52 Stratofortress bombers?
I think at the moment what we're doing is that if the situation gets out of control, we have limited air abilities in the area at the moment that can conduct a surgical strike against the Islamic Republic of Iran in key locations. Most likely using the 341st Fighter Squadron, the United States will attempt to knock out any surface-to-air missile defense systems that would exist in the targeted areas, most likely from the coast all the way up to Isfahan and Tehran. The B-52s would then fly in, launch their cruise missiles, and those cruise missiles would then begin to target the nuclear research and development facilities in Isfahan and all the way up to Tehran as well. That's most likely the kind of a response that we would see from the United States at the moment with the given assets in the area. And of course, that would be supplemented by F-22s and other aircraft like F-16s and F-15s, providing air cover, or largely giving a bit of a screen to the bomber force that would be dropping off those cruise missiles inside of the Persian Gulf. And so with that, I hope that does address that question well. On top of that, Leora Abigail, and thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the third one, also, by the way, folks, I did not mean to spam the exclamation points there. I'm breaking my own rule here. My key got stuck on my keyboard. I don't know what's going on with it in the last 2 days here. I use a Bluetooth dongle to hook it up to my computer, and I think it's getting some interference or something. Oh, come on, man. But the key got stuck when I pressed it, and for some reason it kept doing it. I had to sit there and unjam it for a second to get it fixed. So I don't know what the hell's up with that. But you see, I'm exempt from Nightbot because I'm a moderator, so Nightbot can't tell me a damn word. So it didn't say nothing. But anyways, moving on here to the last one for Leora Abigail. This is another 10. And said, hey, Enforcers, I like the suggestion I heard in the live chat about how you guys should do an LSA con. That would be a pretty badass idea to make happen and take another one from the live chat.
Well, I mean, we could always get involved in a good old LSA con. We could tell people something along...
You go south for the university?
We could get y'all involved in, let's see, LSAers University. We could get that going. We could also get CryptoPunks going. And we could also just generally tell y'all, give us all your money and we'll give it to Ukraine, and then not do that. So if we want to do an LSA con, there are a couple of options there, although we would never do that. Like, just all jokes aside, we would never do anything like that. But as far as an LSA convention, I would love to do that one day. We've been considering that. And what's crazy is that I actually said way back in the day, like, oh, you know, when we get really big and we get up to like 300,000 or 330,000 subs, we'll probably start doing like conventions or meetings, like fan meets and stuff like that. And now that we're here, I'm like, dang, it seems like no time has passed and we're already up to that point. I actually got recognized going to a shooting range the other day. Like, someone was like, hey, I watched your show like a year ago. And I was like, what? I was like, no way. And they were like, yeah. And I was like, that's weird. And it was so weird. But beyond that, we could do something like that in the future. I don't know how we would coordinate that and organize it, but we could possibly do stuff like that here and there. I think it would be pretty cool, Leora. And maybe we'll start working on that sometime around. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
Yes, indeed. And with that, we're moving on to our next one here, and I think this one's going to go to TJX Braveman, who puts in a $15 donation, and thank you very much, TJX, for the support. He said, what do you know about Tajikistan, and can you please say something about its dictatorship regimes? And thank you.
Tajikistan. I actually do not know a lot about Tajikistan. I know a lot about Turkmenistan, and the guy who claims he is pretty much like the heavenly son above and has made Ashgabat into this very weird, like, abandoned metropolis. I know about that. But I do not know a lot about Tajikistan, to be entirely honest with you. I know that it's a country that borders China, but I don't really know much more than that. And so I thank you so much for the support, but sadly, I think I'd have to declare ignorance on that one. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and also, I think Danny B actually put in another super chat here under Danny Goldstein, and he put in a 10 right here, and he said the same thing. I think it was a duplicate super chat that came in earlier. So thank you very much, Danny, once again for the second support, and we appreciate that very much. And our next one here goes to Robert Johnson, who puts in a 5, and he says, great job.
And thank you so much for the support, Robert Johnson, and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for saying that we do a great job. You do a great job helping this channel to keep on running, and we are massively appreciative and greatly thankful for that. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Kachulian343, who puts in a 5 and says, if Iran gets nukes, they'll annex their neighbors and create the biggest terrorist state since the birth of Putin's Russia, and then they'll turn to us.
I mean, maybe. I mean, they possibly could. And really, the only security assurances that a lot of these countries would have in the area is if they started to nuclearize themselves. And then once again, we start running into a massive problem of nuclear proliferation that is not supposed to be happening. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support. And I would agree with that largely, Kachulian, in a big sense. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Irvman, who puts in a 5 once again and says, odds are they have a nuclear weapon, but they've yet to miniaturize it to fit on a medium-range missile.
And I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I would have to agree, they probably have not made it small enough to be carried on the head of a nuclear missile, or they probably don't have a missile that's specifically designed for the warhead. Good way to put that too. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, Nigel Palmer said, I hate to correct the Encyclopedia Enforcer, but current theory that the dogs have been eaten as a food of last resort ever since they were domesticated in 40 to 50,000 BC, especially in the Americans. The thing is that generally in the modern world, because I'm not talking about history at large, I'm talking about really modern history with that. In modern history, people don't really eat dogs. Like, that's just like the general standard, is that no one eats dogs. Usually when you see people eating dogs, it is an act of desperation. It's kind of like how eating horses, for the large part, was generally an act of desperation. Now, that's not to say that horse meat isn't eaten commonly. Like, horse meat's eaten commonly back in the day, especially in the Victorian era, by people who unknowingly were eating it. Like, they did not know it was actual horse meat. But still, people generally do not eat horses or dogs. That's kind of like the standard rule. Now, you do see that sometimes, like in Eastern Asia, you really did start to see that a lot once the Great Famine, the Great Leap Forward created a massive famine in China. You also see that a bit in North Korea and Vietnam, but it's generally not a reoccurring thing that people eat dogs. Like, that's generally considered to be a bit of a taboo thing in most cultures around the world, and only in Vietnam and South China do you see that eating dogs is somewhat prevalent, and even still, it's starting to kind of go to the wayside in South China compared to its peak back in the 1970s and 80s. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can. And also, Michael McMahon said North and South Korea also eat dogs. And that is true, South Korea does eat dogs. But I don't think it's to that high of like an industrial scale kind of a dog eating thing. It's more so like a smaller scale kind of a thing to eat a dog. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, at least from what I know, and I might be wrong on some of that information. But still, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Irvman once again, who puts in a 5 and says, Iran will be a sheet of glass if Iran threatens them with a dirty nuke or tries anything to threaten the Israeli peoples.
Hopefully that would be the case, but they actually did threaten it today, and I haven't seen them turn into glass yet. But hopefully that does end up being true if that ever actually started to happen. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Tomer G, who puts in a 5 and says, keep in mind that Israel believed to have more than 200 thermonuclear bombs, not those regular ones.
And I thank you for the support, Tomer G, but from what I originally have seen, I believe it's somewhere around 50. And let me check that. Israel nuclear weapons. Let's see, so the estimate is somewhere in between 90 and 400 nuclear warheads, so it's actually more than I thought. It's actually more than what you said, too, at least on the high-end estimate. So, that is very interesting. And apparently they have tested the weapons. According to reports, there's been a test in 1963, and there was a test in the Vela incident in 1979. So that's very interesting here. I didn't know that they actually tested theirs, but like once again, like I've always been saying, everyone ends up testing their nuclear weapons to make sure that they work at some point. So I thank you so much for the support and throwing that in, because apparently they do have 200, maybe even more than that. That actually rivals the stockpiles of the United Kingdom and France. But with that, thank you so much once again for support, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Snowy, who puts in a 5 and says, take a live chat question.
And thank you so much for the support, Snowy, and we will make sure to take one. So what do we got, Matthew?
And the live chat question goes to Portstan. He said, this is a good question for you. He said, why is the Kerch Bridge still standing?
That's a good question. We don't know why. The Ukrainians have pledged they would destroy this thing this year. I've never seen them hit it once. So I have no clue what's up with that. I guess that was just a statement they made, and then they never followed through on it, I guess. Or maybe they'll follow through on it in December. Who knows? But still, I hope that addresses that the best I can, Port Stan. Great question, though. And I thank you so much for the support, Snowy, and sponsoring that live chat as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so this one goes to Jexa de Sin, who puts in a 5 and says, for the Tortugas fun, and it was my first Chicago style as well, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Sorry, I can't do more.
And I thank you for the support, Jexa. Sadly, I wasn't able to get around to eating at Tortugas today because I was involved in trying to figure out how to fix the lag issues, which seems like we've largely fixed with an Ethernet cable. And now there's going to be some minor improvements to that kind of an arrangement, and then it ought to be foolproof from that point forward. At least that's what we're thinking right now, and I hope that is the case. But with that, thank you so much for the support, Jexa, and hopefully I will be able to eat at Tortugas tomorrow. I hope that I can, because I would love to have a delicious-looking pizza. And so, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that quite well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Ed, who puts in a 5. And he says, Irish Eddie here. He said, what do you think of E. Snowden? 51% of me thinks he's a good guy, and 49% of me thinks treason. How about you, LSA? Ed, we might have to forfeit our CIA check if we were to comment on that one. Oh, dear. Oh, man.
I would say it's I kind of get where he was coming from on that, but at the same time, that is technically treason. Like it is. Like even if people think it was morally right, legally that is treason. So that would be my take on it, at least at the moment. And I get and like I know a lot of people are like, well, he let everyone know that the government it can look in on people and what they're doing at times, and it's like, yes, that is a good thing, because that is a violation of the 14th Amendment and the 4th Amendment, which gives some sort of a modicum of privacy, at least the two of them combined do, or at least some sort of expected level of privacy, and that is technically a violation of that. However, at the same time, considering that he was handling classified information, and that information was classified, and he released that all to the world, and also a whole bunch of other sensitive stuff, and then went running for the hills, that is treason. So, kind of a bit of a tight line there that we're having to walk, but I would still kind of lean a little bit more towards the side of it's treason, because some of the stuff that he put out wasn't necessarily stuff that needed to be put out, but it was put out nevertheless. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to none other than Trister1, a longtime channel legend, who puts in a 5 and says, corgis.
Hey, and we love them corgis. We actually have pictures of them corgis. Look at them corgis. They precious. That's Miss Wargy right there.
Man, look at those corgis right there. I'm telling you what, so fluffy, so extra fluffy.
And then there's Sheba right there too. Little baby Sheba, little big booty, as I call her, or little baby. Let's see, what the hell? I can't remember the names right now. Scrimpy, and then Grishak. And there's little Grishak right there. But still, we love them. And I thank you so much for the support, Trister, and throwing in a 5 just to mention them little baby corgis. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Tyrell Keene, who puts in a 2 and says, he's saying something about World War III, but we can't read off that front part. Look at me for us, he's getting scared after he saw that one. But thank you very much, Tyrell, for the support, and we appreciate it very much. And we also had a 2 from Marc-Andre Burnett as well. Actually, we had 2 of those, so a total of $4 of support from Marc-Andre Burnett, who's a channel legend, by the way. And thank you very much, Mark and Tyrell, for that support. And we also had another one from Alpha, something body there, who put in a 2. So I told you I'd be back, and love from Jenna Toll.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, and welcome back. It's good to have you back, and good to have you messing around again. Giggity. But still, thank you once again. I hope that doesn't trust that well, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Elka Sir, who puts in a 2 and says, what if countries made bald move instead?
Bold? Well, if they made bold moves, they would have to be bankrupt. But still, with that, I hope that addresses that somewhat well. And I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Stephen Mosher, who puts in a 2 and says, Phoenix is F-14 only, F-16, AIM-120, AIM-7, AIM-9.
That's exactly what I was thinking, Stephen Mosher, and I thank you for supporting the channel and backing me up on that one. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Bruce Lee, who puts in a 2 and says, here's for some hot cocoa for your cold office, LSA.
And I thank you for the support, Bruce Lee, but sadly, unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be used on hot cocoa. I think that's going to be used on, like, iced tea at this point, because it's actually still a little warm back here, which is shocking, believe it or not, because it's always freaking frigid back here, to the point that my fingers are, like, hurting because they got so cold. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are going to be moving on into the live chats. I have to say this really quickly. We are going to have to make this live chat segment a little short because we are having to get up incredibly early tomorrow. Usually we have enough time to be able to get off the stream and have about an hour or two to wind down and then go to sleep. We pretty much have to go to sleep right after the stream to be able to wake up tomorrow to just get like 5 hours of sleep. So to let y'all know, we are going to be addressing the Morse code decoders, 3 live chats, and then rounding this thing out. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so tonight we had it solved by Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, David Millsaps, Royal Fluffiness, and Arabelle Garbo. And I think Arabelle was the one that I took this from, and they told us a thing or two in the beginning. They said, beef it up, add some Enigma code, and also they said today's Morse code says, I've been hearing everyone wants a nuke. Well, let's give them some nukes, wink wink, LLT, LSA, 12, SST 73.
And as it's down to money, and y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I'm not saying that we nuke people, but I thought it was a funny message, and y'all did get that dead on the nail. And I got to congratulate y'all for getting that correct on the 982nd day of the war, because y'all have done that for an incredibly long time, and it looks like y'all will still be doing it on the 1000th day of the war. And so with that, thank y'all once again for deciphering that Morse code message, and we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Norman Ozen, who says, do you think Russia will send back North Korean soldiers that die on the battlefield?
No, they'll probably just let them rot, to be entirely honest. They're probably not that concerned in recovering them, and probably the North Koreans aren't either. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to my fairy tale life 3, who says, any thoughts on a supposed earthquake near the nuclear facility in Iran that's believed to potentially be a nuclear test?
Well, I haven't heard about that today. Usually seismologists, which I believe is what the specific title is, can usually find out that the seismic activity was a nuclear test. I would generally doubt that it was. Usually someone makes an official statement about such a thing, or it's very evident based off the seismic activity that it was an unnatural kind of a seismic event, to put it that way. And so I would doubt it a little bit, but it's not out of the question. So I would say highly unlikely, but not impossible. And so with that, I hope that does answer that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is David Tablet, who says, today I heard that Iran has a new missile system that they're calling the Iranian Iron Dome being deployed today. And do you have any information on that one?
I do not at the moment. And let me see if I can find that. Iranian Iron Dome. Let's see. The Zubin Air Defense System. It doesn't seem as though there's a lot about it. Let me see if I can find it here. So it looks like it's brand spanking new. It's probably not mass produced, and it also appears to have a wildly short range. It's capable of detecting 100 targets within a 30-kilometer radius, and it can engage them in a 20-kilometer radius. So that means that it can engage, it can detect targets about 20 miles away, engage them about 15 miles away. It's not really that competent of a system, especially compared to the kind of caliber of munitions that Iran is going to be attacked with. So it really is to just make it look like they're like Israel, but I don't really see a doctrinal role that thing would actually effectively fill, considering that America is not throwing small little Qassam rockets at Iran, and Israel isn't either, or throwing full-size missiles at them. That system probably would not be able to deal with those kinds of weapon systems. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you for letting me know about it, by the way, because I didn't even know that was something that they had rolled out recently. But with that, that is the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank each and every one of y'all so much once again for watching tonight. We've pretty much almost gotten up to 100,000 views. There's still 5,300 of y'all watching, which is really absolutely crazy. And I thank all of y'all for still being here. And not only that, at the peak tonight, we got up to 11.6 thousand people here. And we are entirely honored and grateful to know that we are y'all's primary source of news for pretty much 1,000 days of war at this point. We will hopefully continue to be for another 1,000 days if necessary. And so with that, we will see y'all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, it is now time to round out this very good stream on day 982 of the War News Stream. So, but with that, be sure to go check out the official EnforcerStore.com, and that is just official EnforcerStore.com, and go take a look at those shirts over there, those Make Russia Small Again shirts. I'm telling you what, get one while they last, because they'll only be here until tomorrow. So, also, a huge shout out to everybody who's already gotten one, by the way. They've been flying off the hyperbolic shelf. Let's just say. But thank you very much for getting one. And with that, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava. We'll see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern on the Nightly War News Stream. And also, if there's enough news to cover, midday tomorrow on the Short War Summary. But with that, get some rest and good night.
Yes. The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.